What happens when you give a power-hungry lunatic the ability to control magic? You get Sid, the Eminence in Shadow, who was isekai'd to another world, and instead of acting like someone with a functioning brain, he takes background character behavior to a god-like level. Nishino wakes up looking like she lost a street fight with a pillow. Her alarm clock is screaming at her, probably sick of her ignoring it every morning. Sounds just like me. She drags herself out of bed, clearly not excited about the day ahead. She hops into the shower, but the moment the water hits her, she starts crying. Real main character energy. After pulling herself together, she steps out of her house, only to get hit with a bad memory that makes her freeze faster than the players in Squid Game's Season 1. Her driver, an absolute legend, claps his hands to snap her out of it. With the grace of someone who just realized they left the stove on, she rushes into the car, getting driven to school. The moment she arrives, all eyes are on her. Some students greet her like she's the school's celebrity, while others just stare like she owes them money. She makes her way to the locker room and walks up to a boy named Sid, the human equivalent of plain toast. They've been sitting together for 3 months, but when she greets him, this fool gets her name wrong. The audacity. She corrects him, and he tries again, and fails again. Nishino is now questioning her entire existence because somehow the guy she's been next to for months can't remember her name. Sid tries to excuse himself, but his reasoning is so dumb that Nishino's soul temporarily leaves her body. She already can't stand him. Not only does he avoid eye contact like it's a contagious disease, but he's also painfully average. He's not smart, not athletic, and not even cute. He's the human version of background noise. She finally just gives up and tells him her name, her patience hanging by a thread. Of course, Sid is too blind to even notice her frustration. Later, students crowd around Nishino, hyping her up because she's landed the lead role in the upcoming night drama. She's nervous, but excited. Meanwhile, she's doing everything in her power to pretend Sid doesn't exist. She heads to the bathroom, and while washing her hands, a flood of bad memories rushes back. Middle school was a mess for her, all thanks to a scandal that forced her to disappear from the spotlight. And now, here she is, back in the game. Sid, on the other hand, spends his time reading a book like he's in an anime about geniuses. He mumbles something about gaining more power, and yeah, that's not suspicious at all. Later in class, the teacher asks for volunteers to tally up the school festival survey. Nishino raises her hand, but the teacher immediately shuts her down because of her packed schedule. Instead, they turn to Sid, who agrees to do it, acting like it's some grand mission. Outside of school, Nishino tries calling her driver, but he's nowhere to be found. Turns out, some street thugs jumped him and left him unconscious. With no other choice, she decides to walk home alone, like the start of every bad decision in horror movies. As she walks, she gets that eerie feeling that she's being watched. Then, out of nowhere, 2 thugs grab her, dragging her into an alley. They put her in a sleeper hold, and before she can fight back, she's knocked out cold. Meanwhile, lurking in the shadows like a discount Batman, Sid has been following the thugs, waiting for the right moment. He watches as they carry Nishino away to their hideout. The thugs, being the absolute garbage they are, plan to ransom her off. One of them, an ex-military goon named Outsider, tells her she messed up by walking around alone, given who her father is. The other thug, however, is more interested in making her relive her past trauma. Nishino struggles, but it's useless. Just as things take a dark turn, Sid finally decides to make his grand entrance. He puts on a mask, grabs a crowbar, and bursts into the hideout like a man who just realized he left his oven on. Without wasting time, he swings his crowbar and sends one of the thugs straight to the afterlife. Now it's just Sid versus Outsider. The military thug realizes that Sid isn't some urban legend, but rather the Balaclava Berserker, an infamous street fighter. Sid, hyped up by his own coolness, starts swinging his crowbar like it's a dance partner. The thug holds his own at first, but Sid keeps coming at him, landing hit after hit. Eventually, the guy collapses, unable to withstand Sid's relentless attack. With the job done, Sid cuts Nishino free and warns her to be more careful next time. Classic hero stuff. Nishino calls the police, but thanks to her father's influence, the whole incident gets swept under the rug. The next day, she walks into school feeling a little different. She sees Sid again, and for the first time, he actually looks her in the eye. And miracle of miracles, he finally gets her name right. Nishino can't believe it. Maybe he's not completely useless after all. But just as things seem normal, news breaks that Sid was hit by a truck and died. The entire school is shocked, but little do they know Sid isn't gone. He's been reborn in a new world, where his childhood dream of becoming a hero is about to get real. As a kid, Sid didn't just dream of being a hero, he lived it. While other kids grew out of their superhero phase, Sid only got more obsessed. He trained, studied combat, and prepared himself for the day he'd become something more. But reality hit him hard. No matter how much he trained, he was still just a guy. Superpowers weren't real, and no amount of effort would change that. But now he has magic. And with magic added to his skills, Sid is ready to become the ultimate hero, or rather, the shadow ruler of the world. He gathers his crew, Eminence in Shadow, and together, they dominate the underground scene. The city is theirs to control, and every threat they face is crushed before it even has a chance. Sid, now living his dream, signals to his crew that it's time to rise to the top. He doesn't want to be a hero. He doesn't want to be the final boss. He wants to be the one pulling the strings from the shadows, the legend that nobody sees coming. The boy has no clue how things started, but one thing is clear. He always wanted to be the Eminence in Shadow. He tells Alpha, who, instead of questioning his weird obsession, just nods like he's the wisest man alive. She confirms that everything he said turned out to be true. Apparently, she looked into some ancient texts and found a description of a shady group called the Cult of Diablos. He acts like he already knew this and cuts her off, going full dramatic mode about how they will lurk in the shadows, hunt the shadow, and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, Alpha just eats up every word like it's gospel. Next thing we see, the police find a dead body in front of a van. Turns out, it's Sid Kaganu, the clown who was on his way to becoming the so-called Eminence of Shadows before his journey got cut short by a truck. Classic. But plot armor is strong with this one because he's reborn into a rich family. His dad is overjoyed, bragging about how his daughter, Claire, always wanted a little brother. His mom, however, senses something's off, maybe because the baby isn't crying, but right on cue, he starts wailing and she brushes off her concerns. Sid, now a baby, doesn't care about the family drama. He's too busy realizing that this world is full of magic. Back in his old life, magic was just a fantasy, but now he can hoard all the power he wants. That's all that matters. He's reborn as the son of Baron Kaganu, an aristocrat living in the middle of nowhere. His family has produced dark knights for generations, warriors who enhance their abilities using magic. Naturally, everyone expects him to be amazing, but surprise, he's not. Instead, he hides in the shadow of his incredibly talented sister, growing up as the most average, ordinary dark knight in existence. Fast forward, and he's out in the wild, confronting bandits. He politely asks them to hand over what they stole. Obviously, they refuse, so he absolutely wrecks them. He moves closer to take their loot, which includes money, art, and food, but then he spots a cage. Expecting to find some poor slave, he peeks inside, only to see a rotting corpse. But wait, it's not actually dead. It's still alive, meaning it's possessed. For some reason, he feels like he's seen this before. He starts blasting magic into the corpse, testing all kinds of methods because, hey, it's not his body, so why not go nuts? A month passes, and after countless failed attempts, he finally succeeds in stabilizing it. And guess what? The corpse turns back into a living, breathing girl. He's shocked, probably because he didn't expect his reckless experiments to actually work. The girl wakes up panicking because, she was literally a decomposing body a second ago. He tells her she's free now because he lifted a terrible curse that had been eating away at her. She asks what curse, and he goes into full storyteller mode, explaining that long ago, 3 heroes defeated the demon Diablos and saved the world. Before dying, the demon cast a curse on their descendants, turning them into outcasts. He adds that history has been rewritten to hide the truth, and that's why she was treated like a monster. He refuses to tell her who's responsible, acting all mysterious, but she's not having it. She demands an answer, and he finally drops the name, the Cult of Diablos, a bunch of maniacs trying to revive the demon. He declares that his mission is to stay in the shadows and crush their plans, introducing himself as Shadow. The girl, still trying to process this insanity, decides she has nothing left to lose and pledges to follow him. He names her Alpha, the first member of his new organization, Shadow Garden. 3 years pass and Sid is now 13, still an ordinary Dark Knight in training, except for the fact that he's fused every martial art from his past life into one ultimate fighting style. But despite all that, he still gets his butt kicked by his sister, Claire. She wipes the floor with him like he's a practice dummy. Instead of acknowledging that he's actually strong, she assumes he's made zero progress. Just as he's sulking, a servant arrives telling Claire that their mother is calling her. It's her farewell party. Meanwhile, Sid, ever the background character, keeps pretending to be weak while secretly preparing for something big. At 15, nobles must attend the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights. But before that, something unexpected happens. Claire goes missing. Alpha and the other Shadow Garden members, who have been growing in numbers, investigate. Eventually, they discover that Claire has been kidnapped by none other than the Cult of Diablos. A high-ranking officer, who also happens to be one of the cursed descendants, is behind it. They waste no time making their move. That night, they storm the cult's hideout. Claire is chained up, fuming. The cultists don't realize they're about to have the worst night of their lives. Shadow Garden ambushes them, taking down the grunts with ease. Meanwhile, the high-ranking officer tries to escape, but Sid isn't about to let that slide. He tracks him down and absolutely wrecks him. Before dying, the cultist warns him that the world's darkness runs much deeper than he thinks. Classic villain last words. Sid takes Claire's pendant from the guy's corpse and walks away like nothing happened. The next day, Claire returns home in a foul mood. Whatever happened, she's pretending it never did. She leaves for the Royal Academy as if she wasn't just kidnapped. Sid sits on a train, deep in thought. The girls had told him about the Cult of Diablos being a massive, world-spanning organization, and honestly, that sounds impressive. But then he realizes something. They totally made that up. They wanted a reason to keep fighting in the shadows, and honestly, he respects that level of dedication to nonsense. It reminds him of his younger self, back when he also created ridiculous stories just to make life more interesting. With a smirk on his face, he decides once again that nothing will stop him from becoming the eminence in shadow, even if it means he's the last one left standing. Later, he arrives at the royal capital of Midgar and stares at a giant, fancy building. This brings back memories of when he was 15 and joined the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights, the same school as his sister. The academy was for elite students from all over the kingdom. How did Sid manage to get in? No clue. He was a background character then, and he's still one now. Back in the past, Sid wakes up, gets dressed, and heads downstairs, where his two closest friends, Skell and Poe, are waiting. These two are about as useful as wet paper towels, but at least they're consistent. After an unnecessary amount of running, they barely make it onto the train, which is packed like a can of sardines. Sid starts whining about how it'd be nice to live in the dorms like the upper-class students. His friends shut that down real fast, reminding him that the dorms are for royalty and high-ranking nobles, not bottom-tier trash like them. But Sid, ever the delusional optimist, thinks they can make it in if they become honor students. The only way to do that, winning the Bushin Festival. His friends laugh so hard they almost fall off the train. Sid then remembers the absolute worst idea they ever had, a bet. The loser of their recent test had to confess to the most popular girl in school and suffer a brutal rejection. And guess who got the lowest score? That's right, Sid, the king of background characters. Now he has to confess to Princess Alexia, the untouchable beauty of the academy. The moment they arrive at school, they see Alexia rejecting some poor soul in public. The guy is on his knees, holding flowers, pouring his heart out like a tragic romance novel, and she shuts him down with zero hesitation. Sid's friends watch, grinning, ready to see him get destroyed next. Later that day, Sid finds Alexia in the woods. His friends hide in the bushes, watching like a bunch of creeps. Sid, the master of background character behavior, awkwardly asks her out. He stammers, looks like he's about to pass out, and delivers the most pathetic confession ever. And then Alexia says yes. Sid's brain breaks. His friends are in shock. The entire universe pauses for a second. The most beautiful, most sought-after girl in school just agreed to date the most painfully average, unremarkable nobody. In the cafeteria, students stare at Sid like he's a walking mistake. They whisper, trying to figure out how a guy with the charisma of a rock managed to date the princess. Sid, now trapped in this nightmare, sits with his friends, who keep reminding him how unworthy he is. He knows something's off. Alexia wouldn't have said yes unless she had a reason. His friends, on the other hand, think he should just enjoy the moment, since every guy in school would kill to be in his place. As if summoned by their conversation, Alexia appears and sits next to Sid, confirming all the rumors. She gets a fancy meal, but casually mentions that she never finishes her food and offers some to the lower class students. Sid sees an opportunity and decides it's time for Operation Dump Me Already. He takes his chopsticks and eats from her plate, hoping she'll be disgusted and break up with him. Instead, she invites him to fencing practice. Sid, realizing his plan has backfired, silently screams inside. In fencing class, the instructor pairs students for duels. Of course, Sid gets matched with Alexia. While fighting, he realizes that her skills are not as amazing as everyone thinks. Her style is basic and rigid. Compared to her legendary sister, she's just okay. But he does respect that she built her skills from the ground up. After the match, Alexia thanks him but immediately adds that she hates his fighting style because it reminds her of her own. Before Sid can process this, their instructor, Zenon, confronts Alexia. He sees her dating Sid as childish and believes she's only doing it to avoid him, especially since she's been betrothed to him. Later, Sid calls her out, accusing her of using him as an escape plan. Alexia, not one to be outdone, turns it right back on him. She already knows he only asked her out because he lost a bet. She threatens to expose this to the entire school, making his life miserable unless he keeps playing along. Sid is about to refuse until she tosses a gold coin at him. He barely pretends to resist before pocketing the money. She keeps tossing more, calling him her loyal dog, and he fully embraces the role. Sid, a man of zero dignity, sells his soul for pocket change. While pretending to be a happy couple, Alexia sees Xenon flirting with two girls. This immediately makes her furious, and she storms past them. Xenon smirks, knowing he got under her skin. On their way home, Sid endures Alexia's endless rant about Xenon. He learns that, despite her perfect public image, she's actually filled with insults and complaints on the inside. He wonders why she doesn't just cut the line for ice cream since she's royalty, but she insists on waiting, saying she wants to make sure the world knows about their relationship. While licking her ice cream, Alexia casually trashes Xenon. She claims to hate everything about him, but she can't figure out what exactly is wrong with him. On the other hand, she has no issue pointing out Sid's countless flaws, which for some reason makes him seem more trustworthy in her eyes. On their way back, she talks about his fencing style again, calling it mysterious but still saying she hates it. Sid, unimpressed with her technique, tells her that she fights aggressively but sloppily. She gets defensive, explaining that she trained herself from scratch, hoping to be as good as her sister. But instead of being called a fencing prodigy, she's stuck with the nickname Fencer Ordinaire. Sid, being an absolute menace, casually tells her that he likes her fencing style. Alexia immediately pulls out her sword and points it at him. He doesn't even flinch. She demands to know what he means, and he just shrugs, saying he only gets mad when people insult the things he likes. And apparently, he likes her fencing. The next day, Sid arrives at school with his friends, who apologize for ratting him out to Alexia. He forgives them, right before knights from the Order of the Rose show up at the school entrance. They march up to Sid and inform him that Princess Alexia has disappeared. Since he was the last person seen with her, that makes him the prime suspect. Sid realizes just how cooked he is. Princess Alexia wakes up in a dark, disgusting room, chained like some kind of captured beast. She immediately realizes she's cooked. The place stinks, the air is damp, and worst of all, she has no idea where she is. Then her brain makes a quick jump. Maybe Sid did this. Wouldn't be surprising considering how weird he is. But before she can think too much about it, she notices something even worse. A hideous, one-eyed creature chained up nearby. This thing looks like it was chewed up, spit out, and then stomped on for good measure. Clearly, it's been through some serious torture. Before she can scream, the door creaks open. In walks a creepy-looking man in a lab coat, grinning like he just won the lottery. He goes on and on about finally finding royal blood, while completely ignoring her attempts to speak. Alexia quickly realizes this lunatic plans to use her blood for something terrible. He finally acknowledges her and explains, like a true villain, that her blood is special. It's demon blood. With it, he can bring demons back to life. She has no idea what he's talking about, but she pretends it sounds interesting just to keep him talking. Meanwhile, back in the city, the Order of the Knights is absolutely losing their minds. They've got Sid locked up, blaming him for the kidnapping. These geniuses think this scrawny, background character-looking dude somehow overpowered a trained fighter like Alexia. To get answers, they decide to torture him. They stab his thigh with long, needle-like claws, expecting him to confess. Sid, being the unmatched coward he is, screams like he's actually in pain, begging for his life. But deep down, he's just waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. These knights have no idea they're playing right into his hands. Back in the torture room, Alexia is sitting there, still trying to figure out when her sister will come to save her. Any minute now, any second, maybe. Meanwhile, the creepy doctor is having way too much fun taking blood from her, giggling like a kid in a candy store. With every syringe he fills, his excitement grows. Alexia finally breaks and asks him to take it easy. She's not ready to die yet. The doctor reassures her, but not in a comforting way. When he tries to draw more blood, the needle won't go through her skin. This sends him into an instant meltdown. He starts ranting like a lunatic about how he can't finish his research, and in frustration, he stomps on the hideous one-eyed creature beside her. Alexia, trying to be smart, brings up the blood situation again, hoping to distract him. But instead of listening, he shoves a bowl of rice in her face. He thinks stuffing her with food will raise her blood levels again. Elsewhere, Mr. Xenon shows up to talk to Princess Iris, Alexia's sister. She compliments him, but Xenon, ever the humble narcissist, takes the blame for the kidnapping because it happened at the academy. They both agree that saving Alexia is priority number one. However, Iris, after reading the reports, believes Sid is the main suspect. Xenon immediately shuts this down, saying there's no way Sid could have defeated Alexia. He basically calls Sid useless, and for once, he's actually right. Iris starts feeling guilty. She hasn't spent much time with her sister in years. The only bonding they ever did was sword training, and now she might never get to talk to her again. Meanwhile, Sid's sister, Claire, is furious. Her loser brother got arrested, and she's demanding his release. No one listens to her because, shockingly, no one cares. After days of being locked up, Sid is finally freed. He gets on a train, heading home, acting like nothing happened. But as usual, his obsession with being a background character takes over, so he refuses to get his wounds treated. While riding the train, he realizes something. He's being followed. A bunch of suspicious-looking guys are tailing him. And then, just to make things weirder, a woman walks by and whispers for him to meet her later. When he finally gets home, he finds Alpha waiting for him instead of Beta, who was supposed to be his assistant. Alpha immediately updates him on their investigation into the cult of Diablos. She also promises that they'll find Alexia and offers to treat Sid's injuries as a reward. He, of course, brushes it off like the reckless idiot he is. She then asks if they should take revenge on the knights who tortured him, but Sid just laughs it off, saying they were just doing their jobs. Too bad for them. His version of payback is coming soon. That night, Sid decides to step into his role as the Eminence in Shadow. His people are already spread across the city, waiting for his command. The moment he gives the order, they launch attacks on every single Cult of Diablos hideout in the capital. It's a full-blown war. But first, Sid makes a personal stop. He hunts down the 2 knights who tortured him, slices them up like overcooked steak, and then delivers their bodies to the guards. Revenge? Satisfying. Meanwhile, Princess Iris is freaking out. The entire city is in chaos, and she has no idea what's happening. But more than anything, she's worried about her sister. The noise from the battle reaches Alexia's prison, making it impossible for her to rest. A few moments later, the creepy doctor runs in, completely panicked. Alexia assumes it's the Night Order attacking, but the doctor doesn't care about them. Something much worse is happening. Desperate, he injects Alexia's blood into the one-eyed monster. Instantly, the thing mutates into something even more terrifying. The doctor, thrilled with himself, starts celebrating. But the monster, not in the mood for his nonsense, immediately crushes him like a bug. Alexia watches, confused. To her surprise, it unchains her and sets her free. The monster, however, isn't interested in being a hero. It charges out into the city, ready to cause destruction. Alexia, now free, sneaks through the halls, trying to escape. That's when she runs into Xenon. She immediately knows something is off. Xenon smirks and reveals the truth. He was behind everything. He supported the doctor's research and planned to use Alexia's blood all along. She isn't even surprised. She always knew Xenon had a few screws loose. Xenon doesn't care about her reaction. He's thrilled because he's already injected her blood into himself. He believes it will make him powerful enough to stop pretending to be a simple sword instructor. He taunts her, saying she'll never be as strong as her sister. Then, just as he's about to finish her off, Sid appears. Xenon immediately recognizes him as the one who's been hunting the cult of Diablos. Sid, still in full dramatic mode, reveals himself in these exact words: Wa ga na wa shadow. Princess Alexia hears the name and her face twists like she just bit into the worst fruit of her life. Meanwhile, Xenon stands there, acting like he didn't hear a thing. But the knights? Oh, they're all too happy to roast Sid, saying he's just a cleanup guy, not someone who actually takes out important cult members. Sid, being the unmatched coward that he is, just shrugs and reassures them that their fate will be the same, no matter how many times they show up. Xenon, now feeling extra dramatic, declares himself a core member of the cult and threatens Sid's life in the name of the Knights of Rounds. He charges at Sid, full speed, looking like he's about to end everything in one move. But Sid is already gone. Before Xenon even realizes it, Sid is casually standing next to Alexia, acting like nothing happened. Sid, ever the king of mockery, asks where this big-shot cult member is supposed to be because he certainly doesn't see one. Xenon looks like he just swallowed a fly. Meanwhile, outside, the knights are failing miserably at protecting the city from a giant, horrifying monster. They keep launching attacks, but the beast just slaps them away like annoying mosquitoes. In a desperate attempt, they hit it with a triple slash, cutting 3 deep wounds into its back. For a moment, it seems like they did something, until the monster casually regenerates like it's no big deal. The knights, realizing they're completely useless, call for reinforcements and prepare to destroy buildings if necessary to take the monster down. Princess Iris arrives and immediately starts slashing at the monster like a woman on a mission. The knights watch in awe as she lands a solid blow, seemingly ending the fight. But no, because of course this thing refuses to die. Iris, instead of panicking, gets mad. She slashes off one of the monster's arms, thinking that'll slow it down. Nope. The monster just grows a new arm like it's no big deal. Instead of freaking out like a normal person, Iris decides that if she keeps cutting it up into tiny pieces, it'll eventually stay down. Before she can put this wild plan into action, Alpha shows up, stopping her mid-swing. Iris, now confused, demands to know who she is. Alpha, not one for small talk, simply says her name and then effortlessly turns the monster into a more human-like form. And if that wasn't strange enough, she actually looks at the monster with sympathy. After finishing her job, Alpha prepares to leave, but Iris isn't letting that happen. She demands answers. Alpha, ever the mysterious queen, tells her to sit back and enjoy the show. Then, she casually reveals that they are Shadow Garden, warns Iris to stay away, and disappears into the night. Iris is left standing there, more confused than ever. Before she can even process what just happened, an explosion rocks the area. She's forced to focus on the present situation, but her mind keeps going back to Alexia. Where is she? What happened to her? Back at the main fight, Sid and Zenon are still going at it. Zenon is slowly realizing why the cult underestimated Sid. They had no idea he was this strong. Desperate to prove his superiority, Zenon casts a spell, calling it the might of a future night of rounds. He makes a huge scene about how powerful it is. Sid, completely unfazed, dodges the attack like he's avoiding a minor inconvenience. Alexia watches in shock. She had no idea Sid was this strong. Of course, she still doesn't realize this masked hero is the same idiot she's been fake dating. Meanwhile, Sid, in peak troll mode, points out that Zenon's so-called mighty power isn't really that impressive. Zenon, now officially triggered, rushes at Sid, attacking wildly. Sid dodges everything with ease, making Zenon look like a complete amateur. The fencing style Sid is using, it looks familiar. It's just like hers, the style she's been mocked for, the style that never lived up to her sister's standard. And yet, here it is, in the hands of someone this powerful. For the first time, she starts thinking maybe her style wasn't so bad after all. Zenon, now fully losing his mind, demands to know who Sid really is. Sid, never missing a chance to be dramatic, announces that they are Shadow Garden, a group dedicated to hunting those who lurk in the darkness. Zenon, now backed into a corner, pulls out his last trick. He takes some mysterious pills, and within seconds he transforms into a monster. He calls himself the Third Awakened, claiming that only those who can control this ultimate power deserve to exist in the Nights of Rounds. He unleashes a devastating attack, calling it the power of the Almighty. The ground shakes, and for a second, it looks like he might actually do something impressive. But Sid? Sid is just standing there, looking at him like he's the most pitiful creature alive. Sid is actually offended. He's mad that Zenon would dare to call himself all-powerful when he had to rely on outside help to get there. Sid goes on the attack. He smashes Zenon with brutal blows, making sure he feels every second of pain. Then, he delivers the final insult. He tells Zenon about his own journey to become untouchable, how he wanted to survive a nuclear explosion, but instead he became the explosion itself. Zenon barely has time to process this insane statement before Sid unleashes his finishing move. He calls it his almighty power, and in one devastating strike, he vaporizes Zenon. The explosion is so massive that Princess Iris, watching from a distance, can only stare in disbelief. Once the dust settles, she races toward the battlefield, desperate to find Alexia. Meanwhile, Alexia, standing in the middle of the destruction, isn't even slightly shaken. She looks at the aftermath like it's just another normal day. When Iris finally reaches her, she throws herself at her sister, overjoyed that she's safe. Alexia, of course, doesn't show much emotion, but at least she lets Iris hug her. The next day, Alexia is back in school acting like nothing happened. She sits next to Sid, who is back to pretending he's just an average student. She starts rambling about her struggles, but Sid, as always, isn't paying attention. At that moment, she thanks him for what he said about her fencing style. She tells him she's finally come to terms with it. Then she asks Sid to keep pretending to be her boyfriend for a little longer. Sid, without hesitation, declines. Alexia, instead of being upset, just gives him a weird smile. Elsewhere, Shadow Garden celebrates their victories. They're convinced that one day, all their enemies will be crushed. However, a new problem arises. Someone out there is impersonating their organization. But they know one thing for sure. Whoever is responsible will pay. Meanwhile, Princess Iris starts looking deeper into the cult of Diablos and Shadow Garden. She's convinced something big is going on, and orders a new investigation team to be formed. She appoints Glenn and Marco to lead the efforts. Back at school, a girl carrying a massive stack of books walks by, only for Sid to block her path like the oblivious fool he is. She drops everything. Sid, trying to be helpful, reaches out a hand, but the girl just stares at him completely speechless. A man is running for his life, but it's pointless. The moment he gets caught, he drops to his knees and begs like a pathetic worm. He promises anything and everything just to stay alive, but no one cares. In the blink of an eye, he's cut down by the shadow hunter. Meanwhile, Sid is in a restaurant with his two idiot friends, making soup. The conversation shifts to his relationship with Princess Alexia. His friends, clearly more invested in his love life than their own, demand answers. Sid casually says they broke up and there's nothing more to say. His friends, already disappointed in him for existing, now call him hopeless. They say his time with Alexia was a complete waste. And honestly, they're not wrong. One of them suddenly mentions a place that could help them, but the other groans thinking it's another stupid idea. They argue like children until the first one explains he's talking about Mitsugoshi, the hottest place in town. They sell all kinds of rare stuff, including something called chocolate, which is apparently irresistible to women. Sid, who had been ignoring their nonsense, suddenly perks up. His friends notice and, in perfect unison, declare they must go immediately. Sid, now trapped by their enthusiasm, has no choice but to tag along. Elsewhere, Sherry Barnett is with her father, Iris, and Alexia. She's handed an object, thinking it's some artifact. Turns out it was taken from a facility run by some group called the Cult of Diablos, an organization nobody knows anything about. They want Sherry to research it since she's apparently the biggest brain in the kingdom. The praise throws her off since, she's still just a student. They tell her people are talking about her genius even in neighboring towns. Her father reassures her that this is an amazing opportunity. He encourages her to believe in herself because one day she'll travel the world with her research. After some deep thinking, she agrees to do it. A knight tells her the Crimson Order will be assigned to guard her. Her father, confused, asks if that's some new knight order no one told him about. They explain it's a small trusted group. Sherry takes the job and Alexia volunteers to help. She wants to figure out what these cult freaks are up to. Iris allows it, but makes Alexia promise to stay out of trouble. Alexia agrees, but let's be real, she's going to do something reckless. Back to Sid and his clown friends. They finally reach Mitsugoshi, but the wait time is 80 minutes. They start debating whether to stay or leave before curfew. One of them, the absolute champion of cowardice, brings up the killer rumors, claiming they should leave before dark. The other one calls him stupid, pointing out they have 3 dark knights with them. Sid, hearing this talk about a killer, gets curious, but his friends ignore him and keep walking. As they move, a girl approaches and asks Sid to take a survey. His friends, being hopelessly desperate, try to join in, but the girl says she only needs one person. She drags Sid away while his friends sulk. She leads him into a fancy mall, and Sid, realizing he's just blindly following, finally asks about the survey. Turns out, there is no survey. She just wanted to bring him to Gamma, one of Sid's old students. Gamma, in all her elegance, is sitting on a throne. The moment she sees Sid, she rushes down the stairs to greet him, only to trip and eat the floor. Hard. Blood spills from her nose as she lies there, completely humiliated. Sid, unimpressed, reminds himself that despite being one of the smartest people he knows, Gamma has the athletic ability of a rock. After she's patched up, she invites Sid to sit, and as he does, he gets that glorious feeling, like a king, like the true eminence in shadow. He wonders how Gamma built and managed such an expensive place without his help. He rewards her, but she refuses, saying she doesn't deserve the honor. Just being saved by him was enough for a lifetime. Sid, moving on, asks if her shop is making good money. She explains that thanks to investors, she has about 1 billion zeni ready to use. Sid, stunned, can barely process it. But Gamma, she's still not satisfied. She thinks it's not enough. Sid, meanwhile, is spiraling, realizing she built an empire using his knowledge without him even paying attention. He should be happy, but all he cares about is the fact that she's making more money than him. After Sid recovers, Gamma warns him about a group pretending to be Shadow Garden. They've been causing trouble in the royal capital, and her people are investigating. Sid, remembering his friends mentioning the killer, immediately has an idea about who's responsible. Gamma, as expected, showers him with praise. Gamma introduces Nu, the newest recruit. She tells him he can use Nu however he pleases. Sid, now fully embracing his kingly aura, says he'll call if he needs anything. Before leaving, he demands chocolate. As Gamma agrees to give it to him for free, Sid secretly steals some zini from her. No shame whatsoever. Sid and his friends are later seen sprinting down the street, chocolate in hand, trying to beat curfew. His friends yell at him for taking so long because he was flirting with the survey lady. Sid apologizes but reminds them that he brought them chocolate. As they run, he randomly wonders if Alexia is the killer. It kind of makes sense. She was already crazy before. Then he senses something, a sword being drawn. He stops abruptly. His friends, confused, ask what's wrong. Sid, ever the dramatic liar, claims he needs to poop and tells them to leave him behind. They don't even hesitate before running off without him. Now alone, Sid prepares to find the imposter shadow hunters. Alexia is already fighting them. At first, it's one-on-one, then suddenly, there are 3 of them. She's holding her own, but things aren't looking great. Then, Sid appears. With his help, 2 imposters are taken down. The last one escapes. As Sid turns to leave, Alexia stops him, demanding to know why he fights. What is his goal? What does he want? Sid, because he's allergic to answering questions, tells her to stay out of it and vanishes. Sid tracks down the last imposter and catches him. Just as he's about to handle things, Gamma appears. She praises Sid, saying she didn't expect him to capture the target so quickly. She takes over, promising to get all the information they need. Sid warns her not to mess it up, and she assures him she won't. The imposter, realizing he's doomed, starts shaking as Gamma casually tells him she's not as forgiving as Lord Shadow. Alexia reports everything to Iris. Iris asks if she's okay. Alexia tells her that the killer wasn't from Shadow Garden. Iris suggests maybe it was another organization using their name. Alexia disagrees, revealing she met someone from Shadow Garden during the Royal Capital attack, someone named Alpha. She explains that Shadow is fighting the cult of Diablos. Iris starts connecting the dots. She realizes the artifact's secret could be the key. Alexia asks the big question, who is the real enemy, Shadow Garden or the cult of Diablos? Iris, refusing to choose, says both. She vows not to let anyone cause chaos in her kingdom. Sid, meanwhile, is back on the train with his friends. They mock him for faking a bathroom emergency. Sid, not even fazed, says he has a bad feeling about today. His friend, more concerned about chocolate, asks if he brought any. Sid nods. And suddenly, the day is declared Operation Gift Giver. They can't wait to impress girls with their gifts. It ends in absolute disaster. Both of them get brutally rejected. Sid, sitting in the library, decides to give his chocolate to the first girl he sees. He spots Sherry, who is deep into her research, and casually drops the chocolate on her book before walking away. Sherry stares at the chocolate, completely confused. Later, she sits in her study, still staring at it. Her father walks in and sees it. He tells her it's a gift, a sign of love at first sight. He asks what she plans to say in return. Sherry, now even more confused, just stares. Her father tells her school isn't just about research, it's about learning to interact with others. Then he starts coughing violently. Sherry panics and tries to call a doctor, but he stops her, saying he's fine. He tells her he's just lucky to have a daughter like her. She smiles and says she's the lucky one. Sid spots a poster about a fencing tournament. While he stares at it, lost in thought, a girl follows him. She wears a school uniform, so he assumes she's a student. Turns out she's new, a member of Shadow Garden, just trying to blend in. She tells him they captured a black-clad suspect earlier, but the guy was brainwashed. Same with others. Those brainwashed fools are called the Third Children. New tried to get information from him, but it was useless. The brainwashing was too strong. Sid completely ignores her. He doesn't care about brainwashed cult members. He's only focused on the tournament. His useless friends, who exist solely to embarrass themselves, are hyped about the competition. They try to convince Sid to enter, but he acts uninterested. They claim they'd have joined too, but they're injured. Obviously, that's a lie. Desperate, they try a different approach. They say girls love tournament champions. Sid is so disgusted by this weak attempt that he punches both of them in the stomach. As they roll on the ground in pain, he finally takes the poster from them and looks at it seriously. Then, he remembers New mentioning that the cult of Diablos is using the tournament to recruit orphans. They drug them, brainwash them, and turn them into cult members. This has been their strategy for years. New also suspects they're using Shadow Garden's name to lure them out. Sid hears all of this and still doesn't care. He's joining the tournament. New tells him a high-ranking cult member named Rex has arrived in the capital. Unlike the brainwashed Third Children, First Children like Rex actually know who they are. New worries about why the cult is sending these people here. Sid briefly considers this before walking away. New, like all the other Shadow Garden girls, watches him with admiration, convinced that his wisdom of the shadows will solve everything. He has no idea she thinks this. The tournament begins and the crowd goes wild. Princess Alexia is still injured, but students gossip about how she would have done well if she had competed. Instead, all eyes are on Rose, the student council president. Everyone bets on who they think will win. Sid's friends, being the absolute losers they are, have already lost all their money betting on fighters who got destroyed. They are in complete misery. Then, the next match is announced. Rose versus an unknown competitor. The mystery fighter turns out to be Sid. His friends are speechless. Sid studies Rose and concludes she's the most skilled fighter at the academy. It looks like he's about to show off his full strength, but no, he has something else in mind. The match starts. Instead of fighting, Sid pops a blood tablet into his mouth and lets Rose hit him. Blood spills from his mouth, and he dramatically collapses. The students erupt in excitement. The referee is about to declare Rose the winner when Sid suddenly stands back up. The fight continues. Sid repeats this humiliating act over and over. He keeps getting knocked down, but every time he gets back up, he's not fighting to win. He's perfecting the art of the ultimate background character loss. Rose is confused. Why won't he just stay down? But as much as she doesn't understand, she starts respecting his determination. She decides to finish the match with her strongest attack. But before she can, the referee, actually worried Sid might die, shoves him out of the way and declares Rose the winner. Sid is furious. He still had so many background character moves to show. Rose, however, is impressed. She acknowledges Sid's unbreakable spirit and declares that even though she won the fight, Sid won the battle of wills. Sid walks around school later, his head wrapped in bandages like he survived a war. Of course, he has no real injuries. A girl approaches him, looking concerned. She asks how he's feeling, then invites him to a cafe. There, she gives him homemade cookies and asks if they can be friends. Sid has no idea what's going on, but just nods. Instantly, the girl turns to a man sitting behind her, her father, and happily tells him that Sid agreed. That's when Sid realizes who she is, Sherry Barnett. And her father is Lutheran Barnett, a legendary swordsman, a man on Sid's personal do not associate with list. He immediately regrets everything. Sherry's father insists that Sid take care of his daughter because she has no friends. Sid wonders why this is now his problem, but to avoid suspicion, he pretends to be injured and promises to rest. He then plans to avoid Sherry for a few days. Meanwhile, Sherry goes home still thinking about Sid. She considers visiting him but remembers that he might be dating Princess Alexia. She suddenly decides to confirm this for herself. Sherry visits Alexia and directly asks if she and Sid are dating. Alexia, forced to admit the truth, tells her that their relationship was fake. Sherry is overjoyed. She proudly announces that she's now friends with Sid and wanted to make sure there were no complications. Then, she skips away happily. Alexia watches her leave, seething with jealousy, but she refuses to admit it. The next day, the students gather for an announcement about the student council elections, but before anything can be explained, a massive magical barrier surrounds the academy. Suddenly, all students lose their ability to use magic. They panic, but Sid notices before anyone else. Then masked figures storm into the school. They claim to be Shadow Garden and declare they are taking over the academy. Rose, furious, draws her sword to fight, but when she swings, nothing happens. Her magic isn't working. Before she can react, the enemies destroy her sword. One of them rushes to finish her off. Just as the blade is about to strike, Sid steps in and blocks the attack. Rose is shocked. She thinks Sid saved her because he cares about her. She has no idea he only did it because he wanted to be the background character who dies first. The enemies drag the students into the auditorium and leave Sid's them for dead. Sid, the unmatched coward, pounds his chest dramatically until he somehow revives himself. His magic is still blocked, but that doesn't stop him. He manipulates it into thin threads, working to break the magic ceiling barrier like a mad scientist experimenting on himself. Meanwhile, Sherry is studying the relic like the nerd she is. Suddenly, Rex crashes through her window like an untrained dog chasing a squirrel. He's here for the artifact, and he looks ready to end Sherry on the spot. Before he can, Glenn, the human brick wall, blocks his attack with sheer strength. Marco, another knight, is busy fighting off enemies and yells at Sherry to run. But Sherry, being the genius she is, just stands there. Iris, still outside, hesitates to send in her knights to rescue the students. Meanwhile, Sid is perched on the rooftop, casually picking off enemies like he's playing a shooting game. He's waiting for the knights to stop being useless, and then he spots something that makes him almost lose it. Sherry. She's just walking through the school, completely ignoring the danger around her. She is the definition of someone who survives on pure luck. Before she can reach the stairs, she trips like an absolute fool. Sid, despite wanting to let fate take its course, rushes in and catches her before she smashes her face into the floor. He gives her an earful, calling her an idiot for wandering around while the school is literally under attack. After that, they head to her father's room, where she finally finds what she's been searching for, the book that explains everything. Sherry identifies the artifact as the Eye of Avaris. It absorbs magical energy, which explains why the knights are powerless. Then, because things clearly weren't bad enough, she drops another bomb. The artifact will explode once it's fully charged. Basically, everyone is doomed. But wait, there's more. The relic she's been studying might be the key to stopping it. It can store an insane amount of magical energy and counter the Eye of Avaris. Sid rushes off to get the tools Sherry needs, but runs straight into Rex and some disposable henchmen. Sid, not in the mood for small fry, wipes out the goons instantly and focuses on Rex. Rex, being a typical overconfident villain, assumes Sid must be using some relic to boost his speed. He pulls out a net barrier to track Sid's movements, thinking he's got him trapped. He does not. The smug look on his face vanishes when he realizes his entire team is already dead. Now, Rex is left alone, counting himself among the soon-to-be defeated. Meanwhile, a newcomer arrives at the battlefield and stumbles upon the Crimson Order members. Glenn, the walking fortress, didn't make it. Marco, however, is still alive but severely wounded. It is then revealed that Marco was her betrothed, which makes this situation even messier. As she contemplates what to do with him, Sid, as usual, is on his own mission, collecting the tools Sherry needs. While Sid is running around like an overpowered courier, New appears with an update. Reinforcements have arrived and are waiting for his orders. She stresses that the rescue operation is risky, but Sid, being the theatrical mastermind he is, just asks her to help him find the remaining materials. New sighs but obeys because questioning Lord Shadow is not an option. Once Sid leaves, New decides to spare Marco's life because, unlike some people, she actually has a heart. Inside the academy, the students are still tied up like a bunch of helpless fools. Rose, the student council president, is fuming. She doesn't understand why they're even restrained when they have no magic to fight back. Meanwhile, Sid and Sherry work on a way to break the magical barrier trapping the school. The barrier is powered by the Eye of Avarice, and after some trial and error, Sherry manages to create a device that can control it. Sid, impressed but suspicious, worries about the hidden tunnels in the school. Sherry suddenly moves a bookshelf, revealing a secret passage leading underground. She prepares to descend, determined to find her father. Staring into the darkness, she recalls the night her mother was brutally murdered. Her mother was stabbed multiple times, and when no one else was there for her, the man she calls her father took her in. His kindness made her trust him completely, which is why she's so desperate to find him now. Sid wishes her luck before she vanishes into the tunnels. Back in the auditorium, the tied-up students are restless. Some idiots think they should fight back, even though their captors are way stronger. Rose tells them to calm down, but they refuse to sit quietly and wait for death. Their stubbornness only grows when they hear gunfire above them. The masked men have started shooting students. Seeing this, the students decide they'd rather die fighting than waiting. Rose still tries to hold them back, but it's no use. Above, Sherry finally reaches the hall where the leader of the attackers is holding the Eye of Avarice. Seeing her chance, she throws her magical device at it. A blinding light fills the room, and suddenly the barrier is disabled. Instantly, Rose breaks free and slams one of the captors to the ground. She yells to the students that their magic is back and orders them to fight. Chaos erupts. The students, now filled with rage, charge at their kidnappers like wild animals. The enemies are terrified. Their leader, proving he's a true coward, tells them to start killing the students before running away like the rat he is. Rose locks onto the leader. She wants him dead, but the other captors block her path, keeping her from reaching him. Just when things seem hopeless, a powerful presence fills the room. Sid arrives, but not as the useless background character everyone knows. This time, he appears as Shadow, and he's not alone. His army, Shadow Garden, is with him. Sid introduces them dramatically, and without hesitation, they cut down the fake Shadow Garden imposters. It's a slaughter. Seeing that the real warriors are handling the situation, Rose orders the students to escape immediately. Not needing to be told twice, they run as fast as their legs can carry them, leaving the fight to the real professionals. Meanwhile, Sherry is still searching for her father. She has no idea he's the very reason the school is under attack. The leader of the fake Shadow Garden, now exposed, releases a chemical that sets the entire building on fire. Outside, Princess Iris and her knights finally charge in, only to find the students already safe. When she asks what happened, Rose tells her they were saved by a mysterious group called Shadow Garden. Hearing this name again makes Iris uneasy. With the school burning, Sherry is still inside, desperately looking for her father. At the same time, the leader of the enemy forces heads to an office, removing his disguise. He burns several books before Sid arrives, casually asking why he's dressed like a cheap villain. The leader, surprised, finally reveals his identity: Professor Lutheran Barnett, Sherry's beloved father. Sid, not even shocked, teases him, saying he figured it out just by the way he walked. The professor, now exposed, asks how Sid found him. Sid ignores the question and instead demands to know why he's doing all of this. The professor confesses his tragic backstory. He was once an exceptional swordsman, but just as he was about to reach the peak of his career, he fell ill. Unable to achieve the glory he dreamed of, he turned to the cult of Diablos for power. He also reveals his role in Sherry's mother's death. Her mother had studied the Eye of Avarice and realized it was too dangerous. She wanted to hand it over to the government, but the professor, blinded by his thirst for power, couldn't accept that. So, like the absolute monster he is, he murdered her in cold blood. Sherry, clueless all these years, continued her mother's research, never realizing the man she loved as a father was the one who killed her real parent. Sid, not particularly moved by this sob story, comments that everyone has their own struggles, but the conversation is over. It's time to fight. The professor, thinking he's already won, fights with all his strength. His swordsmanship is impressive, but Sid plays dumb. He pretends to struggle and lets the professor think he's winning. The professor turns back and his heart nearly stops. Sid is still alive, but now he stands as Shadow. The professor tries to act tough, but he's shaking. He knows he's at a disadvantage. In a last-ditch effort, he fuses with the Eye of Avarice, hoping to gain ultimate power. His body changes, and his strength skyrockets. But it's still not enough. Shadow blocks every attack effortlessly. The professor grows desperate and rants about how he's already framed Shadow for everything. He planted evidence, manipulated witnesses, and made sure the entire world would see Shadow as the villain. He believes he has won, even if he dies here. Shadow, completely unbothered, tells him that he doesn't care. Shadow Garden has never cared about public opinion, and nothing will change that. This realization breaks the professor. If his plan to destroy Shadow's reputation means nothing, then what was the point? In a final, desperate attack, he lunges at Shadow. But Shadow is faster. He slices the professor multiple times, mirroring how he killed Sherry's mother. Then, with one final stab to the heart, he kills him and destroys the Eye of Avarice. Meanwhile, Sherry finally finds her father, dead just like her mother all those years ago. She screams, begging him to wake up. Shadow, watching, briefly considers telling her the truth, that he avenged her mother, but he decides against it. Some truths are better left buried. Later, the world receives a statement blaming Shadow for everything, but Shadow Garden doesn't care. If the world wants to see them as villains, so be it. The next day, Sherry meets Sid. She thanks him for his help, saying she could never have done it without him. Then, she reveals her decision. She's leaving to study abroad in the city of Logos, a place known for its scientific advancements. Before she goes, she tells Sid that there's something she needs to do. He asks what it is. She simply smiles and says, "It's a secret." The destruction of the school, thanks to the chaotic battle between the fake Shadow Garden and the real Shadow Garden, forces the students to go home early. It's an unexpected summer break. While the others leave, Sid stays in his hostel, pretending he has things to do. Soon, he realizes there's nothing to do at all. Just as boredom starts killing him, he receives a letter from Alpha, summoning him to the sacred land Lindworm. Meanwhile, Beta stares at herself in the mirror. At first, she looks miserable, but suddenly, she shifts her posture and transforms into what she believes is the perfect image of herself. She recalls the moment Lord Shadow gave her the power to change her fate. Naturally, she decided to use that power to change her looks because, of course, that's all that mattered to her. Since then, she has become obsessed with him, writing exaggerated stories about how he sees her as his charming young elf. Her writing is a disaster, though. She blames it on her female lead being too dramatic when, in reality, it's just bad storytelling. Frustrated, she goes outside to clear her mind. Outside, she meets Epsilon, and the two immediately start competing over who has the bigger chest. Epsilon casually mentions that Lord Shadow has been looking at her lately. She insists she can feel his passionate gaze. Beta is immediately offended, calling it a mistake, but Epsilon smirks and tells her that if she had a bigger chest, maybe she would have felt it too. Beta, furious and out of comebacks, desperately wants to leave. Luckily for her, Nu arrives with a new directive from Lady Alpha, saving her from further embarrassment. Meanwhile, Princess Iris and Princess Alexia Alexia are shopping for Alexia's upcoming trip to Lindworm as a special guest for the goddess's trial. Iris advises her to stick to the latest fashion trends, but Alexia, of course, doesn't listen. Instead, she insists she can use the trip to gather information on recent incidents in the kingdom. She assures her sister that her innocent appearance will keep her from being suspected. Iris, hesitant but hopeful, agrees, though she secretly wishes she had never told Alexia about any of this. As they shop, the president of the mall rushes to greet them and offers them snacks. Alexia enjoys the food so much that she demands some be sent to her room. Then she asks the president for more travel clothes. Iris reminds her that they already bought party dresses, but Alexia refuses to listen. She wants something more casual. The president, eager to please, introduces them to a new clothing line. To their horror, she presents them with some incredibly revealing lingerie. Alexia is intrigued. Iris, on the other hand, is horrified and complains about how little fabric there is. Alexia, confident as ever, declares that her backside is perfect. She yanks the lingerie off the model, ready to try it on. Inside the changing room, the argument continues. Alexia asks if this lingerie really deserves so much hatred. Iris, speechless, is unable to answer. This, of course, is an instant victory for Alexia, who triumphantly buys the lingerie and more just like it. Back when the school was still burning, President Rose was running around, looking for Sid. After he saved her, she fell hopelessly in love. Sid, wrapped in bandages, is immediately frustrated. He just wanted to disappear into the background, but instead, he's now the object of this woman's unwanted admiration. Determined to stay by his side, Rose insists on joining him on his trip to the sacred land. On the train, Sid regrets every decision that led him to this moment. If he had just waited until night, he could have traveled in peace. But no, he had to play the role of a background character, and now he's stuck with her. She won't stop talking, asking if he's going for the goddess's trial. He says yes, though in reality, he has no idea why Alpha summoned him. As if things couldn't get worse, Rose starts talking about how their paths are now intertwined. She declares that their love will be filled with hardships. Sid does not care. She continues, saying that no one will approve of their relationship, but she doesn't mind. She wants him to win the goddess's trial so she can tell her father about him and their undying love. Sid tunes her out and focuses on the divine teachings in front of him. He recognizes Lindworm as the holy site where the goddess granted power to the three heroes. Rose, still going on about their forbidden love, insists that they must keep their relationship a secret. At this point, Sid realizes she's just trying to convert him to her religion. That night, she comes to his cabin to check on him, but he's nowhere to be found. Unaware that Sid is literally hiding above the door, desperate to avoid another conversation. For 2 days, Sid successfully avoids her. Finally, they arrive at Lindworm. While wandering the city, Rose sees her favorite author, Natsumi, holding a book signing event. For the first time on this trip, she willingly leaves Sid alone. Seizing the opportunity, Sid checks out the books and immediately recognizes them as stolen stories. He suspects the author must be another reincarnator and decides to investigate. At the signing, Sid meets the author, Beta. She has been stealing the stories he told her from his past life and publishing them as her own. As she hands him a signed copy, she also slips in details about their mission. Sid, however, is too busy being disappointed in her to care. After the signing, Rose finds Sid again and rambles about her book. He opens his own copy and notices strange writing in the author's autograph space. He has no idea what it says, but he decides it looks cool. Meanwhile, Alpha arrives at a murder scene. The bodies of top officials in the sacred land are scattered around her. She examines the corpses, trying to figure out who did this. Just then, guards arrive. Seeing her at the crime scene, they immediately assume she's the killer. With no choice, she flees, prompting the guards to close the cathedral to trap her inside. As the bells ring, announcing that a murder suspect is on the run, Sid stands on a rooftop, laughing. Then, he notices movement in the shadows below. He follows the figure and watches as Epsilon slices the man down with her magic. Approaching her, he asks about their latest mission. She gives him the details, and with a confident smirk, he tells her not to fail him. Sid arrives safely in Lindworm, and as a proper background character, he decides to take a bath. As he relaxes, he starts rambling in his head about how he likes what he likes and dislikes what he dislikes. Apparently, one of the insignificant things he dislikes is hot springs, so naturally, he is now in a hot spring. Just as he starts humming, completely enjoying himself, he notices Princess Alexia soaking in the same hot spring. She looks at him, shocked. Sid, in true NPC fashion, ignores her completely, acting like she doesn't exist. he's more focused on enjoying the warmth. Alexia, still trying to process the situation, nervously starts a conversation. She asks about his injuries, surprised at how fast he healed. She clearly remembers cutting him so deep that he should have been bedridden. Sid casually calls her a killing machine, but doesn't bother explaining himself. Instead, he asks why she's in town. She explains that she was invited as a guest for the goddess's trial. She then turns the question on him, wondering what he's doing in Lindworm. Sid shrugs and says a friend invited him because there's a fun event happening. Like an absolute fool, he asks what the goddess's trial is, proving that he has no idea why he's even here. Alexia, baffled by his ignorance, explains that it's a fighting ritual where ancient warriors are summoned from the sanctuary to battle challengers. Sid immediately starts fantasizing about people fighting ghosts. He remembers Alpha mentioning something similar before. Alexia quickly crushes any hope he has of participating by informing him that it's too late to join. She also reminds him that the ancient warriors only answer the call of worthy challengers, subtly implying that Sid is as unworthy as they come. He decides to ignore her, but Alexia keeps talking, revealing that the Archbishop of the cathedral was murdered. Sid, who could not care less, barely reacts. Annoyed by his lack of interest, Alexia finally stops talking. She then tries to recruit him into the Crimson Knights, but Sid immediately refuses. He would rather chew rocks than get involved in that nonsense. As they sit in silence, Alexia starts imagining that Sid wants to make a move on her. Sid, meanwhile, is too busy making sure not to look in her direction at all. He tells her to stop glancing at his body. She tries to insult him, but when he stands up, she is left completely speechless. She just stares at him, her brain shutting down from shock. Then, without another word, Sid leaves. The next day, Alexia meets with the acting archbishop, demanding to conduct the audit. But before she even arrives, he cancels it. When she asks why, he smugly tells her that she was sent to audit a man who is now dead. He also claims they have no time for what he calls her little hobby, since they need to focus on finding the killer. Then, he politely tells her to sit back and enjoy the trial. Alexia is furious. If she wasn't already determined to go through with the audit, she definitely is now. She storms off, already planning to get her father's authorization to override the archbishop's decision. Still angry, she runs into Beta, who is in disguise as the famous author Natsume. Alexia, of course, doesn't trust Natsume. She finds her way too suspicious. Also, her chest size annoys her. She's convinced that Natsume uses her assets to manipulate her fans. On the other hand, Natsume immediately recognizes Alexia as the annoying girl who keeps trying to get close to Lord Shadow. But she is absolutely certain that Lord Shadow would never be interested in her. The two stare at each other with pure hatred. Then, out of nowhere, Alexia stomps on Natsume's foot before walking away. Meanwhile, the acting archbishop begins the goddess's trial, and the crowd is buzzing with excitement. One by one, challengers step forward. The archbishop introduces a fighter from the Oriana Kingdom named Top Bows. In the crowd, two spectators discuss the trial. One explains that an ancient warrior, once summoned, cannot leave until either the challenger or the warrior is defeated. The other guy is confused, wondering why anyone would risk their life for this. His friend explains that winning the trial earns a commemorative medal, which allows the victor to join any knight order in the world instantly. This, of course, catches Sid's attention. As he listens, Sid realizes that if he fights, he won't be able to do his usual mysterious eminence in shadow act. However, none of the challengers are able to summon an ancient warrior, proving that they are all unworthy. At this moment, Sid realizes he hasn't seen Alpha since arriving in Lindworm. Meanwhile, Alpha is busy with her own secret mission. Just when the trial seems like it's coming to an end, Sid hears his name being called as the next challenger. At first, he doesn't know they're talking about him, but when it finally clicks, his face turns pale. Alexia and Natsume are equally shocked. Sid, however, is panicking. He quickly considers his options. Option 1, refuse to fight, but then he would be forced to reveal his identity as Eminence in Shadow. Option 2, run away, but that would get him expelled from the academy. Option 3, cause chaos. Naturally, he picks option 3. He dramatically appears as Lord Shadow, immediately confusing everyone. The Archbishop is stunned, but allows the fight to proceed. Sid then summons an ancient warrior. To everyone's horror, he ends up summoning the legendary Aurora, the Witch of Calamity, a being known for nearly destroying the world. Natsume immediately recognizes her. Alexia, of course, has no idea who she is. Meanwhile, the Archbishop is panicking. He wonders how this random idiot managed to summon the most powerful witch in history. Still, he assumes Lord Shadow is just some lowly bandit who will be crushed instantly. But Sid is in his element. Aurora launches a series of deadly attacks, but he dodges them all effortlessly. He runs around, observing her, analyzing her moves. Then, without breaking a sweat, he slashes her with his sword. The battle is over in an instant. The Archbishop is left speechless. The crowd is in complete shock. But before anyone can react, a magical light appears, signaling that Lord Shadow has answered the Sanctuary's call. Watching from afar, Alpha smiles, now even more convinced that Sid is truly something beyond ordinary. Sid is busy hyping himself up for being the best background character ever. He thinks his big brain moves in the stadium were perfect. But before he can finish patting himself on the back, a giant red door appears under him. Now, a normal person would be concerned, but Sid, he just keeps teleporting away like some confused rat in a maze. The door, however, does not give up. No matter where he moves, it follows him like a debt collector. Finally, instead of running like a fool, he decides to see what's behind it. Meanwhile, at the Sanctuary, Princess Alexia, Princess Rose, and Miss Natsume are watching the goddess's trial when the same giant door appears. Everyone is panicking, wondering if some new warrior is about to pop out or if a demon is about to start a massacre. The Archbishop, who clearly knows way too much, mutters that the Sanctuary is responding to Shadow, whatever that means. Princess Rose, who is just as confused as the audience, asks him what the heck he's talking about. Apparently, this isn't just some basic door. It's got different forms, some welcoming, some deadly, some just being plain annoying like a clingy ex. Right now, they have no idea which one they're dealing with. Then, the door starts to open. The Archbishop, being the responsible adult in the room, tells everyone to evacuate. The trial is over. As they are about to leave, Lady Alpha and the Shadow Garden show up like a boss battle entrance scene, knocking out guards and telling everyone to stay put. Alpha and her crew vanish into the door, but Beta, ever the drama queen, tries to take the Archbishop with her. The princesses try to stop her, but then Miss Natsume gets grabbed and has a sword put to her throat as a warning. Beta, seeing through her nonsense, just rolls her eyes. Before things can get messier, Beta demands both the Archbishop and Miss Natsume come with them. The Archbishop, who must have a death wish, refuses. Out of nowhere, a flash of a sword appears, aiming right at Beta. She dodges, but not completely. Her chest gets sliced clean off. But don't worry, her body has the magical ability to regenerate, so her assets bounce back like nothing happened. The attacker? The executioner Venom, who thought he was about to be the main character. Instead, Beta wipes him out in an instant. She asks if he saw anything. He, being the smartest coward in the room, says nope. Not wanting to deal with more nonsense, she drags him into the door. The rest of the Shadow Garden follow, taking Miss Natsume with them. The princesses are left confused, like they just walked into a conversation halfway through. Not wanting to be left out, Princess Alexia follows them into the door, even when a mysterious voice tells her not to. Inside the Sanctuary, they see what looks like the left arm of the demon Diablos, sealed away. Alpha explains that hero Olivier was the one who originally defeated him. The Archbishop, who is now in full denial mode, asks if she's here to tell fairy tales. Alpha ignores his dumb remark and explains that they are here to learn about the cult of Diablos. As Alpha talks, they discover a statue of hero Olivier. But here's the shocking part. The hero is a woman, not the male warrior the city has worshipped for ages. The Archbishop is sweating bullets now. Alpha, ever dramatic, reveals her face, and surprise, surprise, she looks exactly like Olivier. To find out, she opens the memory graveyard. Placing her hand on the door, she activates some ancient magic. Patterns glow, gears shift, and suddenly a massive vortex appears. The Archbishop watches in horror, realizing that Alpha is unlocking something big. Meanwhile, Sid, who has been minding his own business, enters the room and finds Gamma tied to a chair. He asks if she summoned him, but she says no. She goes on about how she had fun fighting him before, but her memories are incomplete. Sid, not caring about her sob story, turns to leave. She stops him, begging to at least untie her. He cuts her loose, but in the process, also shreds her clothes, leaving her very exposed. Gamma, who has apparently been tied up for 1,000 years, or maybe she just lost track of time, suddenly gets a full wardrobe change, complete with high heels, because logic. Now freed, she tells Sid they should work together to escape. Sid, being his usual clueless self, asks what she'll do when she gets out. She casually replies that she'll vanish into nothingness. Cool, great plan. As they walk out, she explains that the Sanctuary is a prison made from ancient battles, and that the only way to escape is to destroy the magical core. Back with Alpha and the others, they finally uncover the ugly truth. A long time ago, the cult gathered children for experiments, injecting them with parts of Diablos. Many died, but a few survived and became the possessed. Hero Olivier was one of them. The Archbishop, looking guilty as sin, admits that the cult believed these sacrifices were necessary to defeat the demon. But Alpha continues. Olivier was tricked into fighting for the cult, thinking she was bringing peace. Instead, she ended up causing even more bloodshed. The Archbishop snaps, screaming that they shouldn't have uncovered this. But Alpha isn't done. She reveals that the cult extracts blood from the demon's arm to create special beads that grant power and immortality. These beads are given to the members of the cult's highest ranks. Then, she drops the bombshell. There are only 12 beads made per year, matching the exact number of members in the Knights of Rounds. The Archbishop, fully exposed, panics. Lady Alpha asks him to prove her wrong. Seeing no way out, he reveals that the cult's goal is to achieve eternal life and ultimate power. He admits to being one of the Knights of Rounds, but before he can do anything, Delta stabs him from behind and throws him into the water. Thinking he's dead, they start to relax. But nope, the Archbishop, now some giant abomination, rises from the water, ready for round 2. As the sanctuary's security system kicks in, Alpha and her crew find themselves separated, facing the Archbishop in a battle they didn't see coming. Things are about to get chaotic. Find out how the Shadows will use the behinds of this bishop and the others to wipe this sanctuary of theirs.
The girls of the Shadow Garden see that everywhere is white, and they cannot see Epsilon anywhere, so they realize that they have been separated, which is just another annoying trick of the sanctuary's security system. Alpha leads them to fight against Nelson, who is now stronger and more annoying than ever. Nelson, the overconfident idiot, declares that the sanctuary is his playground and they will suffer for daring to step into it. He then does the most predictable thing ever by multiplying himself, thinking that making more of his ugly self will make him more of a threat. Delta, who is too strong to be bothered by his nonsense, starts cutting them down like they are weeds in a garden. She notices that something is off because, for some reason, they are getting weaker while Nelson is growing stronger. Nelson, in his usual smug and unbearable way, brags that he tricked them into coming closer to the center of the sanctuary, where their magic will be drained while his power increases. He wanted them even closer before launching his attack, but since they already walked into his trap like fools, he figures this is enough. As expected, his clones start coming back to life, ready to be shredded again by Delta. Meanwhile, Sid and Aurora are stuck in some dark, confusing place where up and down don't seem to exist. Sid, being the usual clueless moron, complains, but Aurora tells him to stop whining and just keep walking. Suddenly, light bursts from behind them, dragging them into another memory, because apparently this place just loves throwing them into other people's depressing pasts. As if that wasn't bad enough, he looks around and sees that they are now in some battlefield full of dead bodies and abandoned weapons, making it clear that this was once a place of brutal carnage. Sid starts monologuing in his head about how empty and tragic the battlefield is. Aurora, finally showing some basic decency, reaches out to pull him up. They then walk towards a deep pit, filled with nothing but sadness and bad memories. Inside the pit, Aurora finds a younger version of herself crying like a helpless child as Aurora takes his sword, planning to put her younger self out of her misery. But, of course, things can't be that easy, because the moment she approaches her younger self, the corpses around them suddenly come back to life like this is some kind of horror movie. Sid, being surprisingly useful for once, grabs Aurora and jumps away, dodging the newly awakened enemies. Aurora is beyond frustrated, realizing that the sanctuary is rejecting them, which is a polite way of saying it really wants them to leave. Sid, in typical clueless fashion, wonders if they are like a virus being fought by antivirus software. Aurora, who has better things to do than entertain his nonsense, tells him his analogy makes no sense. Meanwhile, the awakened corpses are still coming for them, and Sid asks what happens if she dies there. Aurora assumes she will just be sent back to the first room, but honestly, the idea of repeating this whole mess sounds exhausting. Somewhere else, Epsilon and her group are also making progress, walking through the sanctuary when they suddenly encounter a sick-looking person. They prepare to fight, but the person just vanishes through Epsilon, leaving them all confused. Epsilon, being one of the few people here with a brain, realizes this is similar to the goddess trial, a memory reacting to them. One of her teammates, who clearly didn't get enough sleep, asks what she means. She explains that these memories respond to people with certain conditions, like being possessed. They continue until they find an archive, a narrow room filled with books. Since they can't exactly take all these books with them, Epsilon reminds them that Lord Shadow's wisdom has blessed them because one of their members created a Polaroid camera. As if things weren't already bad, magic continues to drain from them the closer they get to the center, which is the same nonsense they dealt with at the academy. Epsilon tells them to manage their magic, but everyone knows that's just a fancy way of saying, try not to die. Meanwhile, Sid and Aurora are still fighting the undead losers. Sid points out that Aurora is terrible at fighting without magic, and she admits she is nothing more than a damsel in distress. She then sarcastically praises Sid for handling things well, and Sid reveals his secret. He has been training in bodybuilding since he was a kid. Who would have guessed that the clueless idiot actually worked hard at something? He then admits that he doesn't mind this god mode they are in, but with magic, they could go on forever. Deciding that enough is enough, Sid ends the memory by killing the younger Aurora with a quick apology. They are then transported to a vast, brightly lit room. Sid takes a look around and notices a beautiful place ahead. Meanwhile, Delta is still going strong against Nelson. Even though her magic is supposed to be drained, she is still fighting like a lunatic, which shocks Nelson. He can't believe that she hasn't dropped dead yet. Nelson, now afraid, wonders if she awakened her strength on her own, since the technique was supposedly lost ages ago. Clearly panicking, he decides it's time to stop playing and show his full power. He creates more clones, thinking that throwing numbers at the problem will fix it. Aurora watches the fight and, instead of being impressed, is just annoyed by his persistence. Nelson, realizing that he might actually lose, smashes himself against a statue like a complete lunatic, calling for help from Olivier. The statue glows red, and Olivier emerges because, of course. Meanwhile, Alpha, who has been busy investigating, decides they are done and tells the others it's time to leave. Nelson, looking like the fool he is shocked that they are leaving. Alpha doesn't even bother to acknowledge him, stating that they have no interest in someone like him or in useless memories. Their only goal was to cut off the Sanctuary's power, and now that they know how the defenses work, they will return when it suits them. Nelson, left standing like an idiot, tries to convince himself that he still accomplished something. He decides to report to the other factions, claiming that he lured Alpha into a trap to expose her true identity. As he keeps talking nonsense, he receives a notification that someone has entered the Sanctuary's center. He rushes off to deal with them, bringing Olivier along. At the center, Sid asks Aurora if she really intends to disappear after destroying the core. But before they can talk more, Nelson rudely barges in. Sid was expecting the rightful protagonist to appear and gets excited, but instead of a useful hero, he sees Nelson's bald, ugly, and unwanted head. Sid is severely disappointed and immediately knows this guy is just another obstacle. Nelson recognizes Aurora, calls her a witch, and demands to know how Sid freed her. Sid is surprised that Nelson knows her, so he asks Aurora if she remembers this useless lump of flesh standing there. She says she doesn't, which only makes Nelson mock her more. Sid, the world's biggest show-off, finally decides to stop playing dead and opens his right eye like some kind of discount anime villain, announcing to the world that he has them right where he wants them. With the grace of a deranged vampire, he grabs Olivier, pulls her in, and rips her neck apart like she's a cheap snack. Poor Nelson, the resident idiot, just stands there watching, his brain too slow to process what's happening. Olivier crumbles to the floor, and Sid starts laughing like a maniac, sending chills down everyone's spine, including Aurora, who, unlike Nelson, at least has enough brain cells to recognize the sheer insanity in front of her. Nelson, the human embodiment of confusion, asks Sid how in the world he is still alive since he saw Olivier stab him right in the gut. Sid, who loves nothing more than hearing himself talk, goes into a full-blown lecture about how the human body is surprisingly sturdy as long as you protect the vitals. According to this lunatic, getting stabbed in the gut is no big deal if you just make sure the important parts don't get hit. Then, like it's the most casual thing in the world, he pulls the sword out of his body and tosses it aside like yesterday's garbage. He then asks Nelson if he thinks it's genius to just let yourself get stabbed instead of dodging. Nelson, whose tiny brain is working overtime, can't even respond properly, just sweating like a pig and struggling to form words. Meanwhile, Sid is still talking, explaining in his usual smug tone that once an attacker stabs his belly, it puts him in the perfect position to sink his teeth into their neck for a counterattack. Nelson, who at this point has had enough of this lunacy, tells Sid that there is definitely something wrong with his head. Sid, completely ignoring the insult, decides it's time to continue their fight, now that Olivier is out of the way. Nelson, the coward that he is, immediately starts begging, saying that they don't have to fight and can just talk things out. Nelson, realizing that begging won't work, suddenly shifts gears and sarcastically tells Sid that he's not going to cower in fear. He admits he's shocked that a magicless moron like Sid managed to take down Olivier, but he chalks it up to dumb luck. Then he reminds Sid that he only defeated one copy, so there's nothing to celebrate. Nelson flexes his powers and creates a ridiculous number of Olivier clones. Sid, instead of panicking like a normal person, takes his sweet time looking around. With that, he opens his right eye again, releasing a blue light that instantly shatters Nelson's entire army of clones like they were made of cheap glass. Nelson, the living definition of disbelief, just stands there, staring at the raw magical power Sid is controlling. His tiny brain scrambles for an explanation. Maybe it's an artifact, maybe it's slime. But Sid, still in lecture mode, kindly explains that since magic gets absorbed in this place, all he had to do was temper it until it became too solid to be absorbed. Simple, really. Aurora is utterly baffled, while Nelson refuses to accept this nonsense as reality. Still desperate to win, Nelson commands Olivier's remaining copies to attack. Sid, completely unimpressed, mocks him for sending in even slower, weaker copies that move like broken puppets. After playing around with them for a bit, Sid decides he's bored and announces that playtime is over. He asks Aurora to remind him of the mission steps: draw the holy sword, cut the chains, destroy the magical core. She confirms, but before she can stop him from doing anything stupid, Sid decides that following every step is too much of a hassle and that blowing everything up at once is a much better idea. The entire place suddenly shifts to a dim purple shade. He just keeps casting his spell, and within moments, a cataclysmic explosion erupts, obliterating all the clones, shattering chains, and pretty much wrecking everything in sight. Even Alexia and her crew, who were busy being useless elsewhere, look on in awe as a massive explosion bursts out of a nearby water body, sending shockwaves into the sky. Sid, ever the dramatic fool, finds himself in some mysterious dark place. He notices a glowing red chain, raises his sword, and, before he can strike, gets transported into yet another vision. This time, he wakes up in a forest with Aurora standing over him. She asks him how in the world he survived getting stabbed in the heart. Sid, finally showing some signs of exhaustion, sits up and casually reveals that he used magic to move his heart to another side of his body. Aurora, instead of calling him out on this absurdity, just tells him he's full of surprises and starts touching his wound. That's when Sid notices that she's fading away. She settles down and confesses that she was the one who called him there, apologizing for lying. Sid, being weirdly chill about everything, tells her it's fine, but Aurora isn't done. She admits that for the longest time, all she wanted was to disappear and forget everything. But now, thanks to Sid, she has made a memory she actually wants to keep. She tells him that even if she disappears, she wants to hold on to this moment forever. She thanks him, and Sid, in his usual awkward way, thanks her back for the good time. As she starts to explain what he needs to do if he ever finds her real self, she vanishes before she can finish, leaving Sid alone. Somewhere else, Alexia, Rose, and their useless squad reflect on everything they've seen. Alexia, always the dramatic one, feels utterly powerless and frustrated. She laments about how she could do nothing but watch, fearing that if this continues, she might lose her loved ones before she can even react. Rose, meanwhile, has been thinking ever since the Academy attack that there are massive organizations lurking in the shadows, pulling the strings. Natsume chimes in, asking Alexia what they should do. Alexia, after some dramatic sighing, admits they are weak and ignorant, but if they work together, they might actually accomplish something. Since she and Rose are princesses, they have political power, and Natsume, as an author, has connections. They agree to join forces to gather information, recruit allies, and possibly build a base of operations. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Alpha and Epsilon discuss how the sanctuary has been completely destroyed. Holy sword, magical core, everything gone. Alpha, as if anyone needed reminding, declares that only Lord Shadow could have pulled this off, and therefore, whatever path he walks is the path they must follow. As this conversation unfolds, Luna is busy being conned into buying property, but at the last second, one of her employees whispers to her that there's petroleum on the land. Suddenly, Luna flips the script and buys up the entire street, cementing her place as the world's luckiest scam artist. Back with the princesses, Alexia suggests they investigate the divine teachings, but Iris interrupts, explaining that every time she tries to bring it up with their father, the king, he ignores her. Frustrated, Iris declares that she will win the upcoming Bushin festival to make people take her seriously. Alexia, however, isn't so sure, since every major event so far has been hijacked by the Shadow Garden and Diablo. But Iris, full of herself, insists that her sword skills will be enough. The Bushin Festival is here, where all the big shots and wannabe warriors gather to show off their so-called strength, hoping to prove they're the strongest. As expected, muscle-brained fools from all over have arrived, including the Black Knight of the Oriana Kingdom, the Vada Kingdom's best, and a few fighters from the East who probably spent their lives punching trees instead of learning actual techniques. The event is supposed to unify the greatest fighters, but really, it's just a circus for battle-hungry morons who think swinging swords around makes them special. Of course, the walking embarrassment known as Sid decides to join. because apparently the world hasn't suffered enough. He believes the festival's spectators, sponsors, and fighters only care about raw strength, so in his endless delusion, he wants to make them marvel at his own power. He adds this nonsense to his ever-growing bucket list of ridiculous goals, because what else does a self-proclaimed mastermind have to do? However, since he wants to stay hidden, he needs a disguise. Meanwhile, in Oriana's palace, Gamma walks into the hall, probably expecting a normal day, only to find Sid standing by the window, staring out like some tragic prince, while Gamma tries to stay professional, which is impossible when she just face-planted in front of everyone. She tells Sid to get to the point already because nobody has time for his cryptic nonsense, but instead of giving a straight answer, this wannabe king sits himself on the highest throne in the room, as if he owns the place, and declares that he plans to join the festival disguised as someone else. Gamma, who is still recovering from her crash landing, asks why, but of course, Sid won't say. A ridiculous number of outfits are brought out like he's some fashion model, but the highlight comes when Gamma steps forward to smear slime all over his face. She explains that when charged with magic, the slime becomes as realistic as human skin, meaning Sid can transform into anyone he wants. He picks a pathetic nobody named Mundane Man, a knight so useless that his own shadow probably fights better than him. It's a perfect disguise since Sid wants people to see him as weak. A machine is then rolled in, covering Sid's entire head, and after a few seconds, he emerges looking like Mundane Man, a loser so unremarkable that even a paper bag has more presence. To complete the act, Sid adjusts his posture, slouches like an old man, and stumbles down the stairs like he forgot how to use legs. Meanwhile, Gamma, already cursed with the balance of a drunken toddler, trips down the stairs again, landing in a bloody mess. Somewhere else in town, 3 random men chat away, when one of them notices a heavily armored woman walking toward them. One of the men, clearly more informed than the rest, recognizes her as Anos from Velgala's 7 Blades, the same lunatic who supposedly summoned an ancient warrior during the last goddess trial. While they gawk, Sid, now disguised as Mundane Man, but his act is so convincing that even Anos stops him, looking at him like he's some sickly peasant. She tells him he has no business entering the Bushin Festival because he looks like a strong wind could knock him out. Quentin, a repeat competitor, immediately starts flexing his imaginary muscles, warning Sid to quit before embarrassing himself. He even tells Sid to run back to his mommy, which, honestly, is the best advice anyone has ever given him. Crowd laughs, enjoying the humiliation, but instead of taking the hint and leaving, Sid smugly claims he's stronger than Quentin. The words alone are enough to make Quentin furious, and without hesitation, the meathead punches Sid so hard he flies like a ragdoll, crashing to the ground like a discarded toy. While Quentin prepares to pummel him further, Sid, instead of fighting back, mentally critiques Quentin's technique like some self-proclaimed martial arts expert. But rather than waste energy, he lets the fool keep hitting him, treating it like some free massage session. Quentin, confused by Sid's refusal to fight, keeps swinging, while the audience shakes their heads at what a pathetic loser he is. Eventually, Anos steps in, threatening to get involved if Quentin doesn't stop. Quentin backs off. Anos approaches Sid, who now looks like he barely survived a war, and apologizes, saying she didn't expect things to get this bad. Sid, always quick to shift blame, tells her she could have stopped it earlier, but she let it happen. She then gives him the classic "it's for your own good" speech, saying it's better he gets beaten now, rather than suffer worse injuries in the tournament. She tells him to go home, convinced he won't survive. But Sid, as always, ignores the obvious and walks away. Later, at the tournament's registration area, Sid stands among other hopeful fighters, mentally congratulating himself for successfully playing the role of a weakling. Meanwhile, his friend Yup, who is too broke to bet on anything, sits at a restaurant discussing the tournament. Sid pretends to listen, but is really focused on how to make a grand entrance. Yup brings up major competitors, including Princess Iris, a former champion, and Princess Rose, the first Bushin champion from Oriana Kingdom. Sid doesn't care about any of this, but humors Yup anyway. Eventually, Yup realizes he needs money for betting and asks Sid for funds, only for Sid to cut him off by throwing a random gift at him before leaving. That night, while walking, Sid runs into Princess Rose, who looks like she's up to something. She awkwardly tells him she's on her way to meet someone. Sid, who couldn't care less, just nods along. She then randomly talks about eating at the same restaurant as Princess Alexia and Miss Natsume, as if that's important. She also rambles about wanting to befriend them and change the world, which makes Sid internally cringe at her naivety. Eventually, she admits she's actually meeting her father, who wants to introduce her to her fiancé, Lord Perv, a name that is just as questionable as the situation itself. Sid congratulates her, but she looks miserable, explaining that being a princess means she's been burdened with high expectations her whole life. She chose to become a knight, even though her father and the kingdom disapproved. Sid, in his usual way, barely listens, too busy eating a sandwich. She then asks if he believes in her. To shut her up, he says yes. Happy with his answer, she walks away. The next day, the tournament begins. Fighters battle for a spot in the main event, and Sid, in his pathetic disguise, finally steps into the ring. His opponent is Gonzal, a massive beast of a man. The crowd is convinced Sid will be flattened. Sid knocks Gonzal out with a single punch, stunning everyone. Anos watches in disbelief, wondering how someone so weak-looking could win so easily. Later, Sid secretly transforms back into himself, pleased with his work. That night, while sleeping, Yup bangs on his door, holding a newspaper. He informs Sid that Princess Rose has stabbed Lord Perv and ran away. Princess Alexia and Miss Nadum sit in the office, pretending they are doing something important, when really, they are just uselessly talking about how to find Princess Rose, as if saying her name 100 times will make her appear. Somehow, after all that nonsense, they figure out she ran to the north side of the royal capital, which means she is still in the city. Not that their slow brains could have realized that without struggling first. Miss Natum, who always acts like she knows everything, starts talking about how the Oriana Kingdom wants to keep this as a small domestic issue, basically telling the Midgar Kingdom to stay out of it, which is hilarious because they lost their own princess, and now think they have the right to make demands. If Oriana handles this, it will mess up relations between the two kingdoms. But the real issue is that Lord Perv, the second son of some duke nobody cares about, is involved, meaning Princess Rose is going to get the worst possible punishment for hurting him, which is exactly what he deserves. Princess Alexia, who thinks she is smarter than she actually is, says that since Rose is royalty, they won't kill her, acting as if that is some great relief. She decides that they need to find Princess Rose and hear her side of the story, as if they weren't already supposed to be doing that from the start. And Miss Natum, the professional excuse maker, explains that Rose never said anything about her fiancé's nonsense because she didn't want their involvement to cause a war, which honestly sounds more logical than anything they have said so far. Normally, that would be a good reason to back off, but Princess Alexia, in all her stubbornness, refuses because abandoning Rose would hurt her pride too much. Miss Natum tries to clarify that she meant they should move carefully, but Princess Alexia, the queen of overreactions, takes this as an insult and asks if she is an idiot, which is rich coming from her. Miss Natum, who has clearly mastered the art of avoiding direct answers, refuses to respond, making Alexia angrier because nothing is funnier than two idiots arguing over their own stupidity. She grabs Miss Natum by the collar. Alexia, knowing full well that Natum is lying, threatens her life anyway, before letting go and telling her to get to work. They both admit that Rose didn't want to involve them, but since they are allies, they have to do something. Apparently, they just realized that when you say you are allies, you actually have to help each other. Alexia tells Natum what to do, and Natum, always pretending she had a plan, agrees, saying she will look into Princess Rose and also dig up some dirt on her fiancé. Finally, Alexia leaves. After she is gone, Miss Natum invites Lady Beatrix, who for some reason works secretly for her, probably because she has nothing better to do. They talk about getting information on Lord Perv and the Oriana royal family, since apparently, Alexia needs to be spoon-fed information before making a decision. Meanwhile, the Bushin Festival finally starts, and everyone gathers in the arena, excited for the fights. Among the crowd, Sid sits with his dumb friend, but instead of watching the match, he is staring at a newspaper about Princess Rose, because nothing says "I'm suspicious," like ignoring a fight for some old news. His dumb friend, as usual, is thinking about money, betting on fights like the gambling addict he is, while Sid, living in his own fantasy world, imagines some grand secret war happening right under everyone's noses. He disappears to change into his disguise. He runs into Beatrix, the woman from Miss Natum's office. She stops him and asks if he knows an elf girl who looks like her, saying she smells her on him, which is possibly the weirdest way to start a conversation. She reveals that this girl is her late sister's daughter, but Sid, who knows she is talking about Lady Alpha, decides to lie just for fun. To check if he is lying, Beatrix points her sword at him, which he pretends to be scared of, because of course, he has to play along with the nonsense. When she apologizes and helps him up, she tells him he has good hands, which is probably the first compliment he has ever received in his life. Meanwhile, Anos, watching the battle, gets approached by Quentin, who is also here to watch, but mostly just to talk about Sid, because apparently, everyone is obsessed with him. They discuss how Sid won his last match, and how he defeated his opponent so fast that no one even saw it happen. Anos, clearly smarter than everyone else, explains that the only thing she saw was Sid's right-hand move, meaning he won with something so simple that it makes no sense. Now Sid is up against Professor Goldie, some undefeated champion, but Sid, being the dumbest smart person in the room, looks completely weak and clueless. The crowd insults him, thinking he is going to lose, but little do they know, he is just messing with them. Anos, the only one with working eyes, wonders why Goldie can't see Sid's true strength, but then realizes Sid's energy is so low that it just looks like he is weak. When the fight starts, Goldie, like every arrogant fool, charges in full force, expecting an easy win. Instead, Sid dodges and hits Goldie instantly, shocking everyone, because apparently they all forgot that this is what he does. Anos and Quentin try to make sense of it, but the truth is so stupid that they can't believe it. Sid just tilted his head like he was cracking his neck and dodged the attack. Goldie, humiliated beyond belief, starts screaming nonsense, claiming Sid just got lucky, as if that will change the fact that he lost. He demands Sid bow and beg for mercy. Goldie, desperate to save face, unleashes his final attack, a bright golden dragon, because nothing says, "I am about to lose," like going all out in a panic. But before the attack even reaches Sid, he sneezes. Yes, sneezes, and the attack vanishes while Goldie flies across the arena like a rag doll. The crowd is left in shock, unable to process what they just saw. Anos, still trying to be logical, realizes Sid's sneeze somehow redirected the attack, but the truth is, Sid is just a walking disaster of broken logic. Meanwhile, back at the Oriana Kingdom, Lord Perv and Princess Iris discuss security for the tournament, with Lord Perv, somehow healed from his injuries, making jokes about it like the smug cockroach he is. The king praises Princess Iris for saving Princess Alexia before, while Lord Perv, as slimy as ever, insists that Oriana will handle its own problems, clearly trying to keep Midgar out of it. The next day, Sid easily defeats Quentin in the tournament, leaving people confused again. Anos, determined to understand him, waits for Sid and tries to copy his neck-cracking trick, but he ignores her completely because, of course, he can't let anyone figure him out. Meanwhile, Princess Rose, still in hiding, is found by knights who try to capture her, but she manages to escape. Sid, the walking disaster, gets knocked flat on the ground as his opponent barely taps him with a sword. Before he can even grasp how much of a failure he is, he suddenly wakes up in his room. Still groggy and completely clueless, he mutters to himself about getting used to some vague, meaningless concept, but even he admits that he's confusing himself. Maybe if he spent less time pretending to be smart and more time actually training, he wouldn't be the universe's biggest embarrassment. Suddenly, his annoying friend shows up, banging on the door like a madman. Sid, always full of complaints, starts whining about how people are always around him, ruining his non-existent plans. He goes on about how friends constantly want to be with others, even when it's inconvenient. It's funny because nobody actually wants to be around this guy. Sid finally opens the door, and his friend eagerly tells him that they are about to get rich. Apparently, Student Council President Rose is now a wanted criminal, and there's a fat reward of 10 million Zen for turning her in alive. If they can't manage that, they'll get a measly 500 just for providing information. Sid, in his usual detached and ridiculous manner, just walks away. His friend chases after him, asking why he isn't interested. Sid finally asks about a bet he placed, certain that he was going to win big. His friend, now fully unhinged, grabs Sid and pins him against the window, screaming about how he needs money. Sid, proving once again that he has the awareness of a rock, starts wondering about the student council president instead of processing the madness in front of him. He actually admires her, probably because she tried to murder her fiancé. What a role model. Deciding to play along with whatever stupid idea his friend has, Sid changes clothes and tells him that they should begin their so-called operation to find the president. Without any sense or warning, Sid suddenly grabs his friend and jumps out the window, sending both of them crashing into the bushes like complete idiots. They eventually drag themselves to the train station, where Sid notices wanted posters of the student council president everywhere. He mutters to himself about needing to buy time while waiting for his sister to calm down. He also wonders if Rose managed to escape safely, and if given the chance, he'd ask why she stabbed her fiancé, because clearly, that's the most pressing issue here. As he stands there like a lost puppy, Sid randomly remembers being forced to learn the piano in his previous life. He starts thinking about how it helped him minimize his already non-existent friendships. Apparently, people assumed piano players were busy and left him alone. It's almost impressive how this guy finds ways to be the most socially awkward person in every lifetime. He then goes off on a bizarre tangent, fantasizing about playing dramatic battle music on the piano while fighting, as if that would make him any less pathetic. He gets excited at the thought of Moonlight Sonata existing in this world, convinced that another reincarnated soul must be behind it. Sid finally enters a building where a woman is playing the piano. He stands there like a creep, staring at her from head to toe while listing all the songs she plays. When she finishes, the crowd applauds, and Sid, despite his usual oblivious nature, actually acknowledges that she's talented. Later, Epsilon, the pianist, sips tea while her servant brushes her hair. She smugly tells Sid that she's honored he came to watch her play. Sid, in his usual lack of enthusiasm, asks if the song she played was Moonlight Sonata. She confirms and gushes about how it's her favorite piece among everything he taught her. Sid, baffled, tells himself that he never taught her anything. Sid finds it ridiculous that she's winning awards for plagiarism, but considering how dumb everyone around him is, it makes perfect sense. Epsilon assures Sid that she will continue to perform in a way that is worthy of his so-called teachings. Sid congratulates her and then asks if she knows where Rose ran off to. Epsilon, being as useless as Sid, tells him that Beta is handling that case, so she has no details. At the train station, Alexia and Beta are walking down the stairs, talking about the cult and Lord Perv, who definitely has the worst name in existence. They believe he's a cult member and assume many people are aware, but no one has solid evidence. Alexia recalls how her father warned her not to mess with divine teachings. They also discuss the king of Oriana and how his daughter humiliated him by stabbing her fiancé and running away. Beta asks where the stairs lead, and Alexia, in the most dramatic way possible, says they lead to underground royal tunnels, but all the maps are lost, making them a giant maze. Beta then asks why they're heading there, and Alexia, proving she has a terrible sense of humor, jokes about disposing of Beta's body. Beta, not even reacting, just screams that she doesn't want to die. Alexia then states that Rose might be hiding in the underground passages, and that they are going to find her. Beta, realizing she has been dragged into yet another mess, complains but goes along with it anyway. Meanwhile, Rose, now a bleeding mess, she remembers seeing her father's condition, snapping and attacking her fiancé. She also recalls being chased and barely escaping. Now, she feels guilty, thinking she has doomed her homeland. Her mind races as she considers turning herself in. She also wonders if Sid has heard about what happened and if he believes in her. In an absolutely ridiculous moment, she fantasizes about eliminating Lord Perv and saving her father so she can live happily ever after. Then she scolds herself for thinking life is a fairy tale. Her wound worsens and she screams in pain, about to pass out. Just then, she hears the sound of Moonlight Sonata and follows it, finding Lord Shadow playing the piano like some kind of dramatic theater villain. Lord Shadow asks if she wants to fight for her people, and Rose, like the walking disaster she is, declares that she wants revenge and power. Shadow, as over the top as ever, grants her power after healing her in the most dramatic fashion possible. She immediately feels the strength rushing through her, accepting it without hesitation. Shadow vanishes after advising her to take revenge, because clearly, encouraging violence is his favorite hobby. Suddenly, members of the cult of Diablo attack her, and she effortlessly wipes them out with her new magic. She then heads upstairs and runs into Alexia and Beta. Alexia demands answers, asking why she stabbed her fiancé and what the explosion of magic was. Rose, as vague as ever, simply says she obtained power and refuses to explain. Alexia, fed up, reminds Rose of their old promise. Rose, trying to be noble, says she doesn't want to drag Alexia into her problems. Alexia, now furious, throws her lamp aside, pulls out her sword, and attacks. They start fighting using magic and swords, while Beta casually picks up the lamp, blocking incoming attacks. Eventually, Rose overpowers Alexia, carries her briefly, and then leaves her with Beta, apologizing before running off. Beta, watching her go, realizes that Lord Shadow has chosen her. Meanwhile, Sid, the useless idiot, walks home, appreciating the piano tune. He reminisces about hearing Asen play and how beautiful it was. He wishes he had his own piano instead of borrowing. Before he can get lost in more pointless thoughts, a girl stands before him. He realizes it's his sister. He forces a smile and greets her. Sid sits on his bed, probably thinking about something stupid as usual. But before he can even enjoy his pointless thoughts, his sister decides that today is a great day to try out strangling techniques. She wraps her hands around his scrawny neck and starts squeezing like she's trying to juice an orange. She asks him if he has any idea what she was thinking about while waiting for him outside. This moron, still not understanding the situation, actually says he doesn't know. As if she needed more reason to tighten her grip, she does exactly that, and informs him that she has been beating him into a bloody pulp in her mind the whole time. Every passing second, her rage kept building, and the longer she waited, the worse the imaginary beatdown got. Sid, in his genius, realizes that some anger actually grows over time. What a discovery, Einstein. She tightens her grip even more, showing that his opinion doesn't really matter here. At this point, Sid, who is now regretting all his life choices, tries to correct her by mumbling that strangling doesn't actually kill people by stopping their breath, but by cutting off blood flow to the brain. And just when he thinks it's all over, his sister reminds him that he promised they would go home together for the summer holidays. Sid, whose brain is running on its last bit of oxygen, asks if that's true, and she confirms that he has always treated his promises like trash and broken every single one of them. This clown then desperately says he'll try to become a better person. She slaps down a pair of tickets to the Bushin Festival and commands him to go there, watch the fights, and actually learn something instead of being useless. Sid asks if she isn't participating, and she hits him with another fact that he should have known but clearly didn't. She's replacing Princess Rose in the tournament. She tightens her grip again and asks if he was unaware, and this idiot, realizing his mistake, immediately lies and says he totally knew. His sister warns him that if he wants to live long, he should stop neglecting her. She declares that she will be the champion and he better be there to witness it. Princess Alexia and Beta arrive at the apartment. Beta wonders if Princess Iris has left, and Alexia confirms that she moved abroad for research, as if that's important. Beta leaves, and Alexia notices a sheet of paper on the desk. She picks it up and reads it, realizing it's about sword fighting. She mentions that her sister always leaves her clues, but before she can overthink it, fireworks explode outside. The noise fills the stadium as the Bushin Festival begins, and people are excited for the tournament. Sid, now alive but still a disgrace, enters the arena and is asked to submit his sword. Dressed in what he thinks is glorious fashion, he finally reaches a seat, and a girl immediately asks for his name. This fool bows and humbly introduces himself, only for the girl to mention his last name and assume he must be Claire's brother. She tells him that once Claire graduates, she plans to recruit her into her order. Sid, who is completely useless in social situations, is surprised she knows his sister. The girl confirms he's in the right seat because Claire gave him her ticket. He sits, and the girl suddenly apologizes for the trouble she caused him during the Xenongriff incident. Sid, who is too stupid to read the room, just says it's okay and tells her not to worry about it. She continues, explaining that discussions between the royal family and the Marquis have already ended, and since she is Alexia's sister, she apologizes to him again. Princess Iris then asks if the incident affected his friendship with Alexia, and Sid, proving that he has the emotional depth of a teaspoon, tells her that he just picked up the coins Alexia tossed at him. She doesn't understand, so this moron explains how he and Alexia used to play fetch. That's right, she made him dress up like a dog and throw sticks for him to pick up with his mouth. He says this like it's a normal childhood memory, and the surrounding students are now questioning his entire existence. Iris changes the subject and says Alexia was supposed to attend the tournament, but cancelled last minute. Someone asks Iris who she's watching, and she says, Anos, a traveler learning skills on pilgrimage. The students start arguing that Anos will win, and Iris confidently declares that she will be the champion and protect her homeland's pride. Sid asks if there's anyone else worth watching, and two students finally get a good look at this idiot. They realize he's Alexia's so-called boyfriend and immediately start making fun of him. They sarcastically compliment him and advise him not to get any funny ideas about marrying into power. Sid, still proving his lack of intelligence, brings up a fighter named Mundane Man. The students say he's weak and not tournament material. Iris says she hasn't seen his matches, and a student tells her not to bother since he's trash. The discussion shifts to Lady Beatrix, an elf swordmaster and former champion. Sid, in his usual stupidity, is surprised she's famous. He stands up to leave, and Iris asks where he's going. This fool says he needs to powder his nose. As he walks through the halls, he senses a strong presence. Suddenly, someone calls his name, and he turns to see Lady Beatrix. She asks if he was avoiding her, and he denies it. She then asks if he's seen an elf like her since they last met, and this idiot, with all the confidence of a man who doesn't know how to read social cues, says no. They exchange gifts and part ways. Meanwhile, Lord Perv arrives and sits with Iris. She tells him the seats are for students, but he says they should learn from watching him talk to her. He flirts, and she reminds him that he's engaged, but he claims he and his fiancée are fighting. He then informs her that the king won't be attending today, but will watch the fights tomorrow. He also points out that both kings are missing, which he finds suspicious. They notice Anos, and Perv says he wants her to fight for his kingdom, but Iris says she already plans to recruit her. The tournament begins, and Anos tries to strategize, but is immediately outmatched by Mundane Man's speed. She's shocked at how fast he is, but before she can react, she's already lost. Perv tells Iris that her instincts were right, and they discuss Mundane Man's skills. He asks if she will fight him next, and if she's confident. Iris says beauty doesn't determine battles, but insists she won't lose. She then leaves to prepare, and Perv orders his servant to investigate Mundane Man, suspecting he's from the underworld. Meanwhile, Anos approaches Mundane Man and accepts her defeat. She asks who he really is, and he replies that he's just a fool chasing strength. She tells him he could gain fame and power, but he refuses, saying he doesn't want a flashy life. Iris wins her first match using magic. As she leaves, she spots Lady Beatrix and chases after her. She introduces herself, but Beatrix just offers her bread, leaving Iris confused. Meanwhile, Sid walks home, reflecting on his progress in the tournament. He tells himself he must defeat Iris and disappear like a true shadow. He imagines different dramatic paths he could take, but before he can get too lost in his fantasies, he hears a voice. It's his sister, who asks if he had fun watching her match. That's when it hits him. He completely forgot about it. Princess Iris, the so-called pride of Midgar, threw a punch and sent the commander flying, making all the knights lose their minds like they had never seen someone throw a punch before. She walked away, probably feeling like the protagonist of some grand story, when in reality, she was just reminiscing about the time people called her the pride of the Royal Bushan method, which sounds fancy, but really just means she had a bit of skill and a lot of undeserved hype. Some fools even believed that with her around, Midgar would always be safe, which just goes to show how hopelessly naive these people were. At some point, someone had the good sense to tell her to stay out of the citizens' affairs, because shockingly, the people didn't need a princess with an inflated ego running around pretending to be their savior. It wasn't even about her, they just didn't want to step on the Dark Knight Association's toes. But of course, she was urged to focus on more important things, which she naturally ignored because her main priority was proving she was the strongest. When she finally joined the Knights, the people cheered like they had just witnessed the second coming of their savior. They called her the pride of the kingdom while she rode past them, which just inflated her already massive ego. Despite all the praise, she felt pressured, as if the world expected her to actually be useful. This built-up frustration led to her smashing the commander with one punch because she was mad at him for telling her to sit back and watch instead of playing hero. She ranted about her feelings, and the commander, being the only sane person here, reminded her that without magic, even she was useless. Then, because making bad decisions was her specialty, she was too focused on proving she was strong, even if it put the entire kingdom at risk. Meanwhile, the festival preparations were in full swing. Sid somehow ended up with a VIP invite, which was probably the most undeserved privilege in history. His peace was interrupted when Princess Iris sat beside him again, which made him question why she kept bothering him. She claimed she was free from official duties for the day, but let's be real. She was probably there because she had nothing better to do. Sid, being the genius that he was, suggested milk and sugar, which completely blew her mind. She tried it, and suddenly, coffee was the greatest thing ever. Sid, always the clown, thought this was some historic moment that would go viral on the internet. Just as they were eating, a commotion broke out because some guards were stopping a lady from entering with her sword. The guards continued barking orders, insisting she hand over the weapon, but Princess Iris stepped in and revealed that she had invited the woman. She introduced herself as Beatrix, the war goddess. Princess Iris led Beatrix to a seat near her, making Sid extremely uncomfortable. He couldn't understand why two powerful women had chosen to sit next to him of all people. Meanwhile, the knights bombarded Beatrix with questions, mostly because they had nothing better to do. One of them asked why she had been missing from public view for so long. She revealed that she was looking for her niece, who supposedly looked like her. Instead of helping, the knights started flirting with her, saying they could never forget a beautiful face like hers. If stupidity was a currency, these men would be the richest in the kingdom. Princess Iris apologized to Beatrix for the wasted effort, as she had hoped this would help her find her niece. To lighten the mood, the men asked if there was any fighter in the tournament who had caught her eye, expecting her to name some well-known warrior. Instead, she dropped Sid's name. To smooth things over, Princess Iris tried to convince them that Beatrix must have seen something in Sid that they hadn't. Elsewhere, Lord Perv was busy drugging Princess Rose's father like some low-budget villain. The king, now reduced to a mindless puppet, stank from the effects of the drugs, so Lord Perv ordered the guards to spray him with perfume to cover up the smell. The villain monologue continued as he gloated about how easy it was to control the king and manipulate the kingdom. However, he was certain that Princess Rose would eventually return to save her pathetic father. When the king weakly called out his daughter's name, Lord Perv sneered, stating that if she had just handed over the keys like a good girl, things would have been easier. At the tournament, Princess Iris stepped into the arena, hyped up by the crowd, who believed that as long as she was around, the kingdom would be safe. She had convinced herself that she had to win, not for honor, not for justice, but purely to keep people worshipping her. Her opponent, the so-called mundane man, stood before her, exuding the presence of someone who was either completely clueless or hiding something terrifying. The fight began, and before she could even process what happened, she hallucinated her own head getting sliced off. She snapped back to reality, realizing she had backed away in fear. The idiot hadn't even moved, yet she had instinctively reacted as if death itself had touched her. Frustrated, she got up and charged again, only to feel her leg being cut off. Another illusion, yet so real it shook her to her core. She finally realized that this man's range covered the entire arena, and her overconfidence had been her downfall. As she struggled to understand his power, a disguised girl sneaked into the VIP area, expecting security, but instead finding dead bodies. The Shadow Garden sisters were already there, instructing her to proceed with her mission. The girl removed her disguise, revealing herself as Princess Rose. Meanwhile, Iris, still getting humiliated in her fight, realized that her opponent's mere stance and gaze were enough to manipulate her senses. The crowd, once her biggest supporters, started losing faith. Desperate to prove them wrong, she attacked recklessly, only for Mundane Man to dodge effortlessly, grab her by the neck, and slam her into the ground like she was nothing. Lord Perv watched in disgust as Iris got embarrassed, though he was secretly impressed by Mundane Man's power. Just then, Princess Rose entered the hall, and Lord Perv saw his chance. He expected her to beg for forgiveness, but instead, she declared her intent to follow her own path. The king, in his drugged-up state, forgave her. Before he could stop her, she lunged at him, but he used the king as a human shield, forcing her to kill her own father. Devastated, she tried to take her own life, but before she could, Lord Shadow arrived, wiping out the guards. Lord Perv, realizing he was in deep trouble, made a run for it as chaos erupted around him. Beatrix swings at Lord Shadow like a complete idiot, thinking she can land a hit, while Princess Iris, the royal buffoon, is fuming. Not because she actually cares about Beatrix, but because she just realized the random loser she fought earlier was actually Lord Shadow in disguise. The resulting explosion from their blades clashing sends the already brainless citizens into full panic mode. Meanwhile, the King of Midgets, who somehow still believes he has control over anything, is informed that the guests of honor have been escorted to safety. Just as he's panicking over his kingdom crumbling, he suddenly remembers Lord Perv, who, true to his name, is off running like a rat. Meanwhile, Lord Shadow and Beatrix keep clashing, and although Beatrix has skill, she's way out of her league. Lord Shadow barely even tries, pulling off moves so fast that Beatrix, for all her supposed expertise, can't even keep track of where he is. When she pathetically blurts out how hopelessly outmatched she is, Lord Shadow, being the smug disaster he is, basically tells her they're just getting started. Then, in walks Princess Iris, the ever-useless royal failure, thinking she can jump into this fight and somehow make a difference. He just mocks her for relying on a weapon instead of actual skill, which, let's be honest, is completely accurate. This, of course, makes her throw a tantrum, and she screams at him to shut up before launching an attack, which he dodges without even breaking a sweat. Then Beatrix, still flailing like she has a chance, joins in, and now Lord Shadow has to humor these two at the same time. While he's toying with them, Princess Rose finally gets around to escaping the palace. Lady Alpha shows up and gives her two options. Meanwhile, Lord Shadow is still making fools out of the two royal embarrassments. It's painfully obvious he's not even trying, and yet they're struggling to keep up. When Princess Iris tries to show off, he casually remarks that she has potential. The fight moves from the skies to the buildings, and then to the top of a train, where he advises them not to fall, not out of concern, but probably because he doesn't want them to end this too quickly. Meanwhile, back with the ever-lost Princess Rose, she finally asks Lady Alpha what these two choices are. Lady Alpha spells it out for her. She can either keep fighting alone and continue being useless, or she can join Shadow Garden and at least pretend to be relevant. Princess Rose, the kingdom's biggest disappointment, hesitates. Rose finally agrees to join, though at this point, no one's expecting much from her. Meanwhile, back in the fight, Princess Iris is still screaming, demanding to know who Lord Shadow really is. His answer? He's Shadow. That's it. That's all she gets. And of course this infuriates her even more because her tiny royal brain can't process the fact that she's completely outmatched. Before they can cry about it, he launches a fire attack, forcing them to dodge. As if things weren't already humiliating enough, Princess Iris tries a sneak attack, only for Lord Shadow to effortlessly dodge and punch her straight into the water. Meanwhile, Beatrix finally manages to cut his weapon in half. Lord Shadow adjusts his approach and keeps making her look like an amateur. She tries to counter, but he's already 10 steps ahead, proving that while she might be good, she's nowhere near his level. Princess Iris, ever the royal interruption, charges in and ruins the moment. He dodges her, unimpressed, and casually informs her that she can't defeat him with borrowed strength. Princess Iris immobilizes Lord Shadow, screaming at Beatrix to finish him off. The two charge at him, hoping for a miracle, only for Lord Shadow to effortlessly crush their hopes, their dignity, and their bodies in one swift motion. Princess Iris somehow finds the strength to get up and deliver the dumbest speech of the century. She declares that Lord Shadow has made the entire kingdom of Midgar his enemy, and that he has nowhere left to run, as if he's some lowly fugitive instead of the guy who just wrecked everything without even trying. Lord Shadow, hearing this nonsense, laughs so hard he probably loses interest in the fight altogether. The idea that he would run from these clowns is so offensive to him that he decides playtime is over. He unleashes a massive boundary around the city, making it very clear that this fight is about to end. Then, for dramatic effect, he announces his grand attack, stringing together an unnecessarily long and absurdly over-the-top name that terrifies them more than the attack itself. After hyping it up to ridiculous levels, he vanishes without a trace, leaving the two battered fools looking up at the clear sky, completely dumbfounded. Princess Iris screams like a wounded animal when she realizes what has happened, but honestly, no one cares about her feelings because she was too slow to catch him. Meanwhile, Lord Perv is busy getting yelled at by the cult leader like the pathetic failure he is. Meanwhile, the kingdom is falling apart, and the citizens, who are as spineless as ever, decide to abandon ship. Among them is Lady Beatrix, who, instead of being useful, giving unwanted advice to Princess Iris. She tells her to stop obsessing over Lord Shadow, which is solid advice considering how much of an embarrassing mess Iris is. But, like the stubborn idiot she is, Iris claims she can't sit still, as if her running around helplessly has ever solved anything. While she wastes time, the other sisters are dealing with real problems. They're worried about the Night Order hunting down Lord Shadow, but they quickly find out that he's actually using himself as bait to keep Midgar Kingdom distracted. This guy loves playing the hero from the shadows, like he's in some kind of edgy fantasy novel. Lord Shadow, also known as Sid when he's pretending to be a normal human, hops on a bus to school, continuing his tradition of acting like an NPC. Meanwhile, Princess Rose finds herself trapped in yet another bad situation, which is basically her whole life at this point. Apparently, their next move involves walking, yes, walking, to their destination, because nothing screams efficiency like traveling by foot in a world filled with magic and transportation spells. Rose, being the fragile princess she is, immediately freaks out when she hears they'll be going through dangerous areas. Even in her thoughts, Rose can't catch a break because the second she starts thinking about Sid, Lambda immediately shuts that down, making it clear that she needs to let go of everything, including her past connections. Meanwhile, the world around him is falling apart. But that's just a minor detail, because in his mind, everything is going exactly as planned. Will this guy succeed in making a fool out of everyone that comes his way? That even reminds me of the time he faked his death and had a whole process wrapped around his fingers. Hit the like and subscribe. Let's finish this in the next video.